Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Ready Steady Podcast. This is a podcast about board games. We're going to talk about board games, the board games we've been playing. But first, Barry's going to bring us the news. Barry's here to do that. How you doing, Barry?
Good. Older, wiser, and more tired. Always more tired. But we're here. Listen, don't get old. Yes, news. There's lots happening again this week. And obviously GenCon happening kind of as we speak, as we record. But that's not the be-all and end-all. But I did spot something I was keen to have when people at GenCon may have the opportunity, and that is the con-exclusive mini expansion for the gang called Tools of the Trade. Now this comes with a couple of little pieces, just a few extra cards. It's a couple, and you've not played the gang.
I've not played the game.
No, it's good. Anyway, the mini expansion has a couple of extra vaults, which seem to have additional hurdles on them. In the game, you are bank robbers or casino heisters breaking into the vault to steal stuff. These vaults have alarm systems on them, and the game is played out by guessing who's got the best poker hand. Right, you don't have to have the best poker hand, but you all have to agree on who has the best poker hand before revealing. And in the mini expansion, there's 2 extra vaults with some extra security that you have to overcome. And there's a few extra tools to use within the game, and the tools are, again, either things you can use to aid you or things that will hinder your progress for getting in it. And whilst there's enough variety in the box, having a few extra cards would be very welcome, just to mix things up a little bit. So if this remains a con exclusive, might be a little tricky to track down, but hopefully it will come to be more widely available in the future.
Well, it's often available at subsequent cons and things like that, right?
Yeah, I'll get you to keep an eye out at Essen, or maybe Games Expo next year. It's Cosmos release, so hopefully they'll be attending a number of cons throughout the next year. Then I did spot a new game for an old IP, and that game is Doom, or Doom Dark Ages. So that's the latest release from the studio. Is it still ID Studios, or somebody else own Doom these days? Or id Studios?
I think it's still id, isn't it?
Yeah. I've been playing Doom Dark Ages. It's good. It's not drawing me in enough that I've played it all the way to the end yet, but it's still there. I'll give that a go when I want to go mash some demon faces. But this is a game that is inspired by Adrenaline, which is a game from CGE. Players, and it mimics...
I have Adrenaline.
I also have Adrenaline. It mimics the first-person arena shooter. Players run around, pick up weapons, pick up ammo, and try and get the most kills in to score the most points. It also is claimed to have influence from Warhammer Underworlds, which is a Games Workshop release where the sort of head-to-head skirmish battler for very small squads on a hexagonal board.
Played that too.
And Kingdom Death Monster. So some interesting influences
for
the game there.
Barry, I played all of those.
Holy moly! Well, actually, all 3. I've not played Kingdom Death Monster, to be honest. I think I might like it, but I'm probably won't ever play the whole thing. I quite like Adrenaline. Adrenaline has flaws. It's okay, right?
Yeah.
What it's trying to mimic is hard to do in board game form. Warhammer Underworlds, I think, is quite good. I think the re-release stuff is also pretty strong as a sort of skirmish game, if that's what you want, or head-to-head 2-player game. So what they take from those and incorporate into the game, I'll be interested in seeing. I did previously own the Fantasy Flight version of Doom, which the original Doom,
right? Yes.
Which then came out with a second edition, which was totally different, sort of akin to Arkham Horror 2 to Arkham Horror 3, but I never really played it a lot, so I got rid of it eventually. I'm just optimistic that this will be a fun game if it blends all those elements together. I quite like the IP. I'm not enamoured with it. I'm not clamouring for another Doom game, but it's interesting enough. I do enjoy the new lore for the new game, and actually how they broadened the horizons of what Doomslayer is. So I'll be keeping an eye out on this one and hopefully learn a little more as things are released.
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't seen this one. I'm definitely. I like to keep an open mind. I like to keep an optimistic mindset. I grew up on the Doom video game when I was a kid, and I liked that well enough. I played the new Doom in 2006 when they relaunched that.
Yeah,
new. Yeah, I've not played any of the new Dooms, the precursor, this one and the precursor to this one, which I might do. But I'm tentative about this. I mean, Adrenaline, Underworlds, and KDM are kind of like if you wanted to pick 3 games of completely different formats, you know?
Yeah.
Because like Adrenaline is a quick board game that you set up and you can teach in a set and play in a session, probably a couple hours, you know, and then it's done and that's good. Whereas Underworlds is like a sort of a pre-constructed deck builder with the skirmish game attached, and you build the miniatures. It's a Warhammer thing, right? You build the miniatures, you put them together, and then you assemble your force, and then you go and do a head-to-head skirmish. And KDM is, of course, a cooperative campaign game where you play against the game, and it takes many, many, many hours to complete. And of course, there is 2 fundamental elements to it. One is the sort of village management, where you manage your settlement that you're building in the bleak world it takes place in, or the skirmishes where you go off and fight these monsters. So I guess the through line is skirmish, albeit, you know, it's a 2-hour. And I mean, to be fair, Underworlds actually is probably more like a 2-hour game as well, but it's just got all that homework you have to do first, where you build your deck and choose your cards. You can play out the box, though. So maybe that's an unfair characterization.
Well, I'm assuming that the Kingdom Death Monster element is the wee boss fights. The Underworld part will be head-to-head skirmishes, and the Adrenaline part will be free-for-all arena combat. So I think they're probably 3 different game modes. Now, can they pull off 3 different game modes? It is Modiphius Entertainment, so they've done what Elder Scrolls.
The Elder Scrolls adventure game.
Yeah, Fallout. I see they've done Lugu, which is the only game I probably own from them. You'll also find me in the playtest credits. Pick it up. And they don't have a great track record of games that I want to play, to be fair.
Yeah.
This is another IP.
The note about Modiphius really is that they got into the tabletop gaming area as a RPG company. I haven't played their RPGs, but they're known for publishing RPG books. They started a sort of aside as board game publishers, and I gotta say, I don't think they have too many big hits.
No, not knocked out of the park.
Yeah, I've not played a lot of them, to be fair. I've looked at a lot of them. I tried to play the Elder Scrolls adventure game. I also played their Elder Scrolls miniatures game, which, you know, is certainly not enough to drag me back into miniatures gaming. But they've got the Siege of the Citadel as well, which was a sort of a reprint of something that was popular. I don't know if the reprint was very well received. I think the campaign also had some problems that were maybe clouding the issue. And then Homeworld Fleet Commander was something I looked at as well, because I like the Homeworld video game, but it was not well received. I mean, I ended up not pulling the trigger on it. Again, just because with Modiphius, I'm always like a bit uncertain. So anyway, I guess the reason, if anything, that I'm cautious about this one is simply because of Modiphius's sort of patchy track record with board games, and also the designer, who has very little credits. Which doesn't mean it can't be good. It's just, you know, it's sort of ambitious it's an ambitious project with very few credits on it. That's all.
They got time to iron it out and give it the polish and love it deserves. Could be good.
Yeah, I mean, we will have to wait and see. I'm always cautious about these sort of about these games where they offer all these different game modes, you know, and then not one of them feels like the right way to play. And what you really need is a really good, solid system underneath. This came up recently because I was talking with Mark from Not Board Gaming about Voidfall, you know, and we were talking about the cooperative mode, which functionally adds a bit of overhead where there's a sort of a greater entity that you have to work together to beat. but we're discussing how the PvP, because combat in the game is completely deterministic, PvP never manifests. So realistically, the competitive mode is just some competition for first come, first serve objective points, and that's like it, right? There's no, and then there's this sort of, tacit threat of maybe we could fight each other. But realistically, are there any major differences between the competitive mode and the cooperative mode if you can't attack each other, if you're not really doing any player interaction? And it's sort of like, I kind of wish that maybe they'd just committed to one mode rather than trying to make them both work. Albeit in that game, the rules overhead and the discrepancy is so minor, and the core system is so compelling, if you like that sort of heavy Euro management stuff, that it kind of overcomes that problem. I think what you need, therefore, is a really compelling core gameplay system. So if they can come up with something like that, like a core skirmish game system that works, that would be great. But I think about stuff like, so I'm thinking about like the Edge Dawnfall, which was a multiplayer game, and that worked well, actually. That worked well even at 2-player and multiplayer, albeit at multiplayer. It sort of came with all the extra complexities of a free-for-all 3-player game, and they didn't really change much. So I guess maybe I've talked myself into this could work.
We don't know anything about it, to be honest, so I guess we'll just have to wait and see before making any decisions.
I think it's ambitious. I think it's ambitious with a lot of pitfalls that they could fall into, but if they can navigate it successfully, it is possible to do. I think I've just talked myself into the fact that it's possible to do, albeit sometimes I would always maybe just wish that they'd picked their favorite mode and, just made the best game they possibly could within a more limited set of parameters. Not every game needs to be all things all the time.
Send us a copy, Modifius, and we'll let you know.
Yep, exactly right. Send us 2. 1 each, please. Thank you.
Oh, one of us can get Doom, one of us can get Doom Dark Ages.
Oh, are they doing one for each?
Yeah, it's 2 different games.
Oh, interesting.
I imagine they're compatible, but...
When you say 2 different games, you mean sort of like 2 standalone core sets with the same system?
Yeah, I think that's what the intention is, because there's definitely a Doom and a Doom Dark Ages.
Interesting.
Although, maybe some gloom.
Yeah, we can move on from some doom and gloom to something much less positive.
Yes. So, recently, CGE announced that they were publishing a new edition of Codenames Hogwarts, and have come under fire for basically giving J.K. Rowling more money, and for then half-heartedly putting out a message saying that people should separate art and artist without mentioning any of the controversies around why supporting the artist may be an issue. People are, backlash for this one, for continuing to fund J.K. Rowling's war chest, which, as we both know, she directly uses money from Harry Potter licensing to fund her political agendas, which directly harm various people. Again, I'm skirting around the issues, but the trans community in particular, under the guise of supporting women. So her views are controversial, to say the least, and outright harmful to certain segments of the population. And so giving more money to her to fund her political ideas is, at the moment, unlike somebody that the comparison's been to Lovecraft, who held deep-seated racist views, and everybody, uses Cthulhu mythos within their board game themes. The difference being that Lovecraft is not using the money to directly fund something that's harming people. So quite different in that sense, and in this case you cannot separate the art and artist. CG's statement about how people grew up with Harry Potter and love the world, sure, but there has to be some accountability if you're going to go with licensing from that artist.
Yeah, I think those are at a very high level. The issue here is that not only is the artist still alive, but the artist is directly putting those profits into funding this political agenda. So it's not as simple as saying, I want to disassociate the art from the artist. And, I grew up on Harry Potter. I grew up near Edinburgh, and I had a first edition paperback of Harry Potter. So I was one of the very first people in the world to read it, long before it was a big phenomenon. And I love Harry Potter. I don't enjoy it anymore, and I can't. Mm-hmm. And that's because, and I don't blame anyone for taking that away from me. I still love the magic of that world, and I would love to be able to enjoy it without considering the real world implications and associations. And, I'm grateful to the actors from the movies who came out and said, we don't support this stuff. I don't see how you can say that in this context. Context is so important, and when that money is there's such a direct through line to where it's being used. And this issue has become so politicized. It's just been turned into a political weapon by so many people with bad intentions. It's mind-boggling to me that it's as prevalent as it is, and it's an issue that really ought to be between people and their life choices, and not really in the public consciousness at all. Private and a private decision made by people who know themselves and their own bodies, and they should be given the space and freedom to explore that and do what they feel is, I think medically or socially or whatever necessary to make themselves feel like they can live the life they want to live, And I don't get where I truly don't understand this sort of infringement on women's rights. There's so many more important problems, and this is where it gets complicated, right? Because of Rowling's background with dealing with domestic abuse, a real serious issue affecting women, and not just women, but trans women too, who are also proportionally much higher victims of domestic abuse, simply because there are fewer of them, I think. And I guess they're more, I don't want to say more vulnerable. I don't have any data to support that. So I don't know. They are victims of domestic abuse in much the same way as any other woman. I think it's very short-sighted. I think it's very short-sighted of CG to come in and produce this game. I know Asmodee did a Harry Potter game a couple of years back. They didn't get as much backlash, which is a shame. I think it goes to show maybe that people had a higher opinion of CGE. And to be fair, we've always got along with them really well. They've always been very supportive of the show. I like their games, generally speaking. We're a big fan of some of their games, like Lost Ruins of Arnak. And so it's upsetting, that in a world where they've got Codenames Marvel and Codenames practically everything else.
Well, they already have Codenames Harry Potter.
They already have it.
Yeah, but this is a different version, some different mechanisms. But publishing Codenames Harry Potter in 2008 is very different from publishing Codenames Hogwarts in 2025.
Yeah, I think this would have been best left on the shelf.
Or 2018, sorry, not 2008. Thought that seems like too long ago. I'm sure there could have been any number of other themes they went with where the mechanisms would support almost as well with minimal changes. But we'll see how it plays out. I would imagine this will be review bombed from the get-go, and additionally probably not perform very well economically. Reviewers are already refusing to review it or mention it as a release. And I think it'll probably just fade off into obscurity, but people will remember the choice made to publish it in the first place. So we'll see how that plays out for CGE and any future releases. I
suppose they've got to have some connection with the Rowling estate if they've got these rights. And I guess, as far as I'm concerned, if I think about it, I think this is probably strike one. So I'm willing to give CG the benefit of the doubt in that regard. I think it was a tone-deaf decision, and they should have known better. We'll see what happens next,
And actually, we could be wrong, right? The general populace, and this is going into hobby store, not just hobby stores, sorry, but mass market stores. How much is the average person on the street aware of what's going on versus just knowing about Harry Potter? A lot of people don't keep up with the news in quite the same way.
This is why this whole thing feels so sort of tragic, is because, you know, the trans community are it's such a small community, but it's really obviously so important to the people for whom it's everything, you know? And Rowling is such a big figure. She's almost on her own, you know, representative of so much political power and against a community that's already marginalized and fighting for very basic rights, you know, and they're losing, and it's tragic. And most people aren't aware of it, you know, because it affects so few people, you know, and unless you have friends in the community, unless you pay, you know, a sort of a nerdy amount of attention to politics, you might completely miss it. We are, as a community, incredibly diverse, and I'm so grateful for that, you know, and I don't want to lose that, and I don't want to marginalize people. And I think board gaming being a safe space and you know, I think one of the reasons why it's a safe space is because it's a very structured, rules-based space. You know, all of our activities are very rules-based, and so, you know, it's sort of, it's free to act within, you know, within something that's structured and feels, I guess, calming or safe because of its structure. And so, you know, I don't want to lose that, and I think, you know, that's why I'm saying, you know, it's there's going to come a time where, you know, there's going to be an opportunity for Codenames Hogwarts Pictures, you know, Codenames Hogwarts Jewel, and that would be strike 2 and 3, wouldn't it? And
yeah,
you know, make a mistake once, shame on you, should have known better. Make a mistake twice, that's deliberate negligence. That's putting profits above the community, and that would be a real shame to see. That'd be really upsetting.
Well, we'll keep our eye on it, and when it does come out, we'll see how people respond. But I don't think we'll be hearing a huge amount about it.
Well, no, I suspect that the conscious members of the community will ignore it or boycott it or review bomb it on BGG. But I suspect that CG will, you know, they've sold so many more copies of this game than, I mean, this game is a mass market game. You know, it's going to go into, as you say, all of those stores and go out to the wider community of, you know, the people who are mad excited for the HBO show and don't really know anything about any of the political issues.
Well, other industry news, you may hear us talking about crowdfunding such as Kickstarter, GameFound, BackerKit. What we never talk about is IndieGoGo. And GameFound have just bought IndieGoGo, but I would say they probably have their work cut out for them cleaning it up. It is where scammers go to scam one last time before being kicked off every crowdfunding platform ever. It is, I think it must have been one of the first sort of crowdfunding platforms, and found a niche for people to go on and do everything. But this is GameFound branching out from just board games. They're going to provide the infrastructure and the platform the same as GameFound works. So with their stretch pay, with the, you know, the whole community updates and everything else that they do really well, and they're obviously getting into the wider crowdfunding market, where GameFound is purely board games, IndieGoGo is everything. So this is their venture into everything to take them more in line with Kickstarter. But I don't know. I don't think IndieGoGo is becoming GameFound. They're not going to merge, but I think your login might work between platforms, and you'll now be able to buy whatever crowdfunding nonsense your heart desires on StretchPay. You ever bought anything from IndieGoGo?
I was just thinking, like, I think I've only ever backed one crowdfunding campaign that wasn't a board game. And it was on Kickstarter. and it was a egg that lights up and makes noises. And when my cat hits it enough, it spits treats out for her. And it's not bad.
Fair.
So
we'll keep an eye on it. We'll see what happens. It's obviously early days for the announcement.
This is the ongoing, and more fuel in the ongoing metamorphosis of Awaken Realms from a board game company into a global commerce entity. You know, it was it was actually third-party Warhammer models. Then it was board games. Now it's then it was video games, and then it was crowdfunding, more video games. Now it's crowdfunding and more crowdfunding, and we'll see. Yeah,
they put some numbers out. Like the biggest, I think GameFound had a bigger single campaign than IndieGoGo's biggest campaign. So it's just interesting that board games are still such a huge thing in the crowdfunding space.
Yes, board gaming has always been a massive, just a really natural fit for crowdfunding.
IndieGoGo is branded there, crowdfunding innovations and support entrepreneurs. So, things that if you were going to create a device that would automatically drill wells in rural areas, you would go to IndieGoGo to support that.
Do we know of any majorly successful IndieGoGo products? Any evidence of IndieGoGo being incredibly successful to support independent development of, worthwhile products?
Blockchain stuff aside.
Yes, worthwhile products like
it's mostly blockchain stuff.
Oh no.
Backer kit. Flowhive. Tell me more. What is Flowhive? A brand of beehive with a unique honey frame which allows honey extraction without opening the beehive.
So I like that. I can get behind that.
And that raised $13.25 million.
Really? That's wild. The beekeeper community is bigger than I thought.
Yeah, it's still not small, right? It seems like a good fit. Whether they make money at it, I don't know. I'll be paying too much attention to what's being sold there, because mostly I use Kickstarter and GameFound for board games.
Yeah, this is very much tangential to really what we're doing. Unless there is some major shift where GameFound and IndieGoGo merge in a more meaningful way. Fine, I guess Awaken Realms or GameFound Limited or whatever they're called now, they can continue to grow and expand.
Then, going back a couple of episodes, we spoke about some claims that were made against Zatu, one of the UK board game distributors and stores. People were complaining about working conditions within the factory and, not factory, but the warehouse and shopfront, and the churn of people kind of coming through it. Zatu have now had a chance to respond, denying exploiting low-paid apprentices and claiming seasonality of workers as being what people were experiencing, and that they do keep people on after that trial period or after that sort of rush period for holidays and events. I don't know what. We'll stick a link in the description so you can read for yourself, but obviously having made people aware of the allegations, we might as well make people aware of the rebuttal. Then we spoke about Tycoon Games and buying Simon IPs, including Blood Rage, Ankh and Rising Sun. They are continuing their assault on the washed up game market. The already published game market. And that is, they've just bought Colt Express, Living Forest and Lewis and Clark to add to their list of IPs. Now, interesting, Colt Express is a semi-evergreen, shall we say. I think, it still sells quite well. It's popular, it's fun, it's got a good toy factor, probably relatively mass market. Living Forest is quite a good game.
Didn't they? Colt Express just got a big reprint, and that's a 10-year-old game, so.
Living Forest, which I've played a fair few games of, is pretty solid. Incorporates a number of mechanisms, much more hobby gamer. I think it has one expansion as well. And then Lewis and Clark has a first and second edition. I still own the first edition. It is a solid game. I don't know what they're really going to do with it though. I don't think the system's strong enough to like build other things on top of it. I mean, sure, you could get another theme relatively easily, but I don't think there's a lot of scope for expansion with it. However, what do I know? And I don't know. This could be super popular in perhaps the States, right? The Lewis and Clark name may carry a lot more weight and might be more of interest to those across America, but it's rarely talked about as far as I can tell. It is a good game, I enjoy it. I just don't know what they're going to do with it.
So actually, it's 3 games that we think are, well, you've played them all in this case, and I haven't played any of them. No, that's not true. I played Cult Express. I'm lying.
You've not played Lewis and Clark?
No, I haven't played Lewis and Clark.
It's good.
So there you go. So these are 3 games that you actually think are pretty good. Or at least we can see why Cult Express is a good purchase, and the other 2 you think are pretty good.
Yeah. I'm not super enthralled with Cult Express, but it's fine for what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Living Forest is a solid game, if not going to be somebody's favourite, perennial favourite, and Lewis and Clark is fine, fun. I'm always happy to play it. It does get a bit out of hand at higher player counts. That's not true, because you're only looking at your left and right icons, but you can get an obscene amount of resources by piggybacking off your, what's the word I'm after? Not your opponents, your adjacent opponents' cards. At 3-player, I normally play it at 2-player, but I don't know what they're going to do with it. So, I think the end game for Tycoon games is to be bought up by Asmodee, but I don't know if Asmodee are on their same kind of buying spree they once were.
Yeah.
We shall see. Look for another set of 3 Kickstarters or GameFound projects coming from Tycoon Games to reprint these ones. Then a couple of Kickstarter, more crowdfunding games. So Flip Voyage, which is a sequel to Flip Town, and the expansion to Flip Town New Frontier is currently up on Kickstarter and should be available, assuming you're listening to this podcast, as soon as it's published. I've not managed to find a copy of Flip Town anywhere in the UK for any reasonable amount of money, and I've wanted to play it for a while. There is a sort of print and play version that I just can't be bothered making. So I'm definitely on board with picking up both Flip Town and Flip Voyage, which is an underwater retheme and changing mechanisms as well. Mostly solo game with a campaign with the expansions to play through. You're flipping a pack of cards and marking things on your score pad, so it's a flip and write. I'm interested in it. I've backed this one. I'm looking forward to actually getting the games and playing them. I don't suppose you've played Flip Town?
No, these are 2 games that really don't fit within the sort of wheelhouse of games I like. I'm okay with flip and writes if they're welcome to.
Yeah. That's fair.
It's just not. I mean, to be fair, I wouldn't say no. If you're like, you have to see this, I'd give it a try. But that's my approach to most board games. I'm a sort of board game mechanism nerd, and I'm more than happy to try anything at least once. But I would certainly not be looking out for flip and writes or this sort of thing. Certainly not if they're solo.
Fair. And then a game that I mentioned previously is Time Troopers, which we spoke about a couple of podcasts ago, was on GameFound, and it has stumbled over the line into being funded. It was funded within the first 2 days and then did not pick up any momentum towards the end, right? It was a really badly run crowdfunding campaign. They only had 2 updates. The first update was after 36 hours. Hooray, we funded. Their second update was 2 days before the end of the campaign, where they actually put out a rulebook.
Oh my God.
So if I hadn't seen this at the expo, if I hadn't been aware of it beforehand, if I didn't kind of know what it was about, there was no real reason for me to back it. I think it's only got 250, 300 backers in total. There was a very limited amount of communication throughout the campaign. I'm not surprised it didn't do better.
Mm-hmm.
than it did. I would expect that if this comes out and it's great, you'll get a second edition at some point. But if it's not brilliant, if it's just average or slightly better than average, there'll be very few copies of this out in the wild. But I'll have one of them, and that's what's important.
Well, I suppose they'll be. I suppose if they've only got some 300 backers, then there's a certain expectation for uptick during Pledge Manager. But also the minimum print run, I think, will be higher than that. I'd be surprised if there's a minimum print run of less than 1,000 units. So there may well be a chance to pick this up later. But again, 1,000 units means
500,000 units. Maybe it'll go to retail. Maybe not.
Unlikely.
Maybe you'll be seeing this in cons for years to come.
Well, I doubt it as well. I suspect, unless it's really bad.
Trying to sell the remaining 700 units.
Yeah, if it's really bad, then yes. But possibly if they bring it out, if they've got extra stock on their hands and they're struggling to move it, they'll probably discount it, and then if it's decent, it'll go. But having said that, they might actually end up fulfilling most of their print run in the Pledge Manager if it's a bunch of retailers that have backed at some kind of retail level, or which seems unlikely, or if people come to it after the fact. I mean, now they've got a rulebook app up, maybe they'll get more. I don't
actually think the rulebook properly explains how to play the game either. I've looked at the rulebook. I kind of know how to play. I don't think it gives you all the rules.
Oh, that's not good. That's really bad. That's super bad. We're not in an era anymore where you can run a crowdfunding campaign with an incomplete rulebook.
No, and not to have that available day one is unforgivable.
I think it's okay to be open about areas where you might develop. This is subject to change, There's an idea that we're going to put this in and we're still developing that. I think that's fine, so long as you're clear about what you're still working on and clear about what's set sort of in stone. And of course, nobody's going to be upset if, case in point, arcs massively changed between the Kickstarter campaign and the delivery of the final product. Now, some people were upset about that, but they were very transparent about it. And they were also, I think they were pretty transparent about it. And the product that did come was great. I'm personally really glad they decided to pivot in the way they did, if only because I love the final product. Now, I appreciate if you don't like the final product, you might feel very differently about that.
Yes, not a way to run a campaign. But in addition to not being a way to run a campaign, Asmodee, not a way to run a company, specifically Asmodee UK. So it came to light during the last couple of weeks that Asmodee UK are heavily leaning on AI to do a lot of their work. Now, I highlighted a couple of podcasts ago that the social media team were putting out AI-generated images as part of their advertising, and they were not good. What it's now turned out that's happened is last month, so published on the 26th of June, somebody in that team used AI to write an article about Flip 7, a very simple game. You have a number, you flip a card, if it's the same number, you're bust. Otherwise, you can bank your points at any time. The AI has written the rules for a completely different game, where you do not want to get the dreaded 7.
I was just reading this. This is mind-boggling. I've not seen this. I can't believe this. I'm so sorry to cut across you, Barry.
It's okay.
We played Flip 7 at UKG, and there's this how to play. So I thought this was going to be something completely different when I saw this in the show notes. It says Asmodee added again with AI, and then it's a link to how to play Flip 7. And I thought that there was going to be like a how to play video, but instead of a person or pictures of the games, that used like AI art or something like that. No, this is an AI written how to play guide, which I think is longer than the actual rule book.
Massively longer than the
and it's not right. It's a wrong game.
It has nothing to do with Flip 7, other than they both mention 7s.
And it's got pictures of actual Flip 7.
Yes. I'm assuming they're not AI generated. They look like
No, they look like marketing
legit
renders or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
So some marketing photos and then maybe a render. So the actual images of the game are correct, but it's talking. I'm reading. I can't believe this is still up.
It's not.
It's not.
They took it down as soon as people started raking them over the coals for it.
Oh yes, this is a web.archive link.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
So, Wayback Machine.
well
yes,
sourced.
Each player is dealt a hand of cards. Typically, you want to deal about 5 cards to each player. What? No, you don't.
This is one of the things I love about it. At some point, it says to make the game shorter, take some 7s out of the deck, which actually, I guess, would make it marginally longer.
Yes, because you're probably going to bust more often. The percentages all change. What happens if you get a 7 in the flip 7? Wow, the 7 card has a special power. The player who flips it draws another card from the deck. No, they don't.
That's not true at all.
Yes.
To be fair, I don't know why it's called flip 7.
Because when you flip 7, then the round immediately ends.
Oh, that's right. You immediately score your whole thing and end the round.
Correct.
That's
you get
right.
15
yes.
bonus point and
yeah, I couldn't remember that it was 7 unique values you needed, but that's what it is, isn't it?
Yeah. So, but let's say you didn't know that was the case, and somebody asked you to write the rules for Flip 7, you'd probably look at the rules for Flip 7, and you wouldn't just make up the first thing that came to the top of your head.
Well, you wouldn't say something like, Step 1. When it's your turn, you'll take a card from your hand and flip it face up into the center of the table. Don't have a hand of cards in Flip 7.
No. Well,
Nope.
you do in this rules. You get
You do in
maybe
these
about
rules.
5. Is the suggested amount of cards to be dealt.
But here's where it gets interesting. You don't know which card your opponent will flip next, and you certainly don't want it to be a 7.
The dreaded. Yeah, awful.
Remember, the 7 is your nemesis. If you flip a 7, you'll have to draw another card, possibly triggering a cascade of additional 7s. This can quickly become overwhelming, so knowing when to play it safe is key. What? What? Why would you ever flip a 7 if you had a hand of cards and you could choose?
Exactly.
This makes no sense at all.
I did go back through and start looking through their other blogs to see if they'd been doing this repeatedly. I didn't see anything immediately. But you got to assume. I think that there's one person in the Asmodee UK team that I'm going to say they're probably Gen Z. And I think that they've been tasked with getting stuff up. They've got no oversight. They've nobody signing off on what they're doing. And they're just putting stuff up. And they're reporting on the engagement metrics. And probably not much else.
Well, somebody noticed this and took action because it's not available anymore, apparently.
Yes.
But I'll put a link in the show notes because I don't think we should forget. So thanks to Barry for
if you
finding
get a chance,
this.
go read the rules. It's like, what are you talking about?
What's amazing about this is Flip 7 takes, a minute to teach. You don't even need to teach it. You can just start playing it. It's so simple. Yeah. And I mean, it actually takes a little while to play because it's like first to 100 points, but you could either play to less points or play a single hand and you'd understand practically the whole game. And so I just think it's mind-boggling that someone was like, it will be easier to AI generate this much stuff rather than just go find a colleague who knows how to play and just play it once.
Yeah. And I'd like to point out that it's to 200 points in case anybody thinks Mike's been replaced by AI.
Oh,
and just coming up with the rules.
This is 200 points. To be fair, I think we decided to play to 100 points at UKG. But
the best, a deck of cards, each number from 1 to 10, and directly above it, there's an 11 and 12. It's like, anyway, 0, 11 and 12. Get on that, Asmodee. Sort that out.
Wow.
And then we'll come full circle with some more GenCon news. Chronicles of Crime from Lucky Duck have announced a new version, right? Or a new set of games, or a new... I don't really know what they've announced. There's more Chronicles of Crime. So Chronicles of Crime very much thought was done with the last sort of crowdfunding effort, and it's available for retail. They're through Time series, the 1400, 1900, 2400 games. Looking at their Instagram, not a huge amount of information, but they will be revealing new Chronicles of Crime at GenCon. And looking at it, it looks like they're a little more out there themes. There seems to be like a Cthulhu one or a cryptid one. as well as your bog standard normal crime to go with the existing series. Now, Chronicles of Crime, I've still got loads to play through because nobody wants to play it with me. The problem is it's not a particularly good social game because one person's looking at their phone to scan the QR codes and get the information, and one person at a time is looking at the crime scene through their phone. Hopefully they've got something that's going to adapt that so multiple people can be logged into the same adventure if they're going to stick with the QR code system and the phone system, or alternatively maybe they've come up with something brand new for it. We'll see. Alternatively, maybe it's just more cases.
Yeah, for those of you that don't know anything about Chronicles of Crime, this is a Lucky Duck game. Lucky Duck, of course, were championing digital app integration for quite some time, and a lot of their games have digital app integration. I'm thinking of The Dark Quarter, of Destinies. I'm sure there's more, but their big sort of major app integration was Chronicles of Crime, and it's a cooperative crime-solving game where functionally you are looking at a crime scene on your phone or on your device, and it's sort of like a window into the crime scene, right? And you actually move it around in front of you, and it shows you different elements of the room. So it's like you're looking around a room by actually moving this device to look around, and you're searching for clues, which you can communicate to your teammates. And then there is a tableau of characters who might be witnesses, and it's been years since I've played. I played the first core set when it came out, and I haven't touched it since. Much like Barry, I actually quite enjoyed it. I would have been quite keen to explore more of it, but I just never much had the opportunity. And I don't know if that's because it doesn't work in bigger groups. I don't know. I only ever played it 2-player when I did play it at all. So there's a tableau of characters who might be witnesses or suspects or colleagues, like your scientist or your crime scene assistants or whatever. Exactly. I think that's sort of how it works. And so when you see something in the crime scene that you want to investigate more, you then decide who you're going to talk to, and they've got QR codes on, and you scan them, and then it triggers something in the app, and then that's sort of it's not dissimilar conceptually to Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective. Instead of picking locations and reading from a book or scanning newspapers, you're looking at an app and you're scanning QR codes and looking at cards. But it's kind of the same idea. You have to solve the crime within a given amount of time and try to do it the best you possibly can, and then at the end you're rated. But it's immersive and it's fun, and if you have a tolerance for app adjacent games, I think this one's actually a pretty good one. I enjoyed what I played of it.
Yeah, what you're saying about larger groups, definitely true. I had a friend come round. Chronicles of Crime sitting in the pile to play and move on, because once you've solved the cases, you can't really go back to them. Mm-hmm. There are some downloadable cases and stuff, but he was like, "Oh, you've got Chronicles of Crime." I was at a gaming group last night. There was, there's 8 of us. This guy brings this game. You've got to play it. It's the best game I've ever played. And he pulls it out and they start playing, and just everybody's bored because so few people can get involved at a time, and it just wasn't a good social game for that kind of group. Maybe 2, 3 at a push. If you go any higher than that, then somebody's just sitting out. Like, by the time you've passed that crime scene around to all 4 players, mm-hmm. It's just boring. So yeah, I'd stick with sort of 2 players for that. But I do want to finish it, and I believe that the 2400 one's really good, and the one that ties all the ages together is supposed to be really good. I'd like to play more, but nobody really wants to play with me because we started with too many and everybody got bored of it. So.
And I think that's something they could have easily fixed with the app as well. Is as you rightly say, the app is tied into one device, and you have to pass it around. And so I don't know if you can share devices for the scanning of the actual characters, or if you have...
No, you'd be in a different... Because you log into the app, and then you choose the case, and then it's running on your phone, mm-hmm. and not a central area.
Yeah, and if they'd
have you played Detective by Portal?
Yes.
So I think that's a bit different. I think they actually store the information...
Well, it's all web-based, so I think multiple people can go and sort of log into the same account, or you can either share the actual account details, or I think you can create sort of guest passes and share them amongst devices. Because we definitely used multiple devices when we played that.
Yeah. So something like that. If they solve that, I think they'll broaden their audience a little bit. And if they make it more out there, they already have the noir version of the game where you can punch people or intimidate them or bribe them. They have the Redwood one, which was so Redwood, yeah, Welcome to Redwood, I'm sure, which was the 80s themed Stranger Things type one, and then the Time series, going from medieval to future. So it's a system that can work. So we'll see what's announced. We'll have more information for you on next podcast.
Very good. Well, that's going to wrap it up for the news for today. I hope that you've enjoyed that. If there's anything you think we missed, you're always welcome to email us, askreadystudypodcast@gmail.com. In the meantime, we're going to move into the games we've been playing and that we're going to talk about in more detail. I think we've got 2 each this week, but I know that Barry's going to talk about one I've played before, and I'm going to start off with a very quick mention that I might get into more, but I'd be really interested to hear how you guys have been getting on with this one. So I've been playing Scarface 1920 and the Bloody Business expansion. Well, I say I've been playing that. We played it twice, right? Once with the core set alone and once with the Bloody Business expansion. And this is really well reviewed. It's been a very popular Kickstarter. It is a co-design from a first-time designer, Daniel Simon, and a Spanish designer who's got a little bit more pedigree to their oeuvre, which is Tony Sarah Dasenfirm. I'm sure that's wrong. Anyway, the publisher is Red Zen Games, who are specifically set up to crowdfund this project. But now they're working on another game from Tony. The artist is Antonio Stapeerts, who's done this and also another game called 300 Earth and Water, based on 300. I don't know if it's based on the Spartan legend or the comic books, but I'm not going to go into too much detail on Scarface 1920. I was going to do a full review of it, but I think I need to play it one more time. It is, I mean, fundamentally, it's 1920s Prohibition era. You're playing as the gangs, fighting for control of Chicago, specifically the alcohol scene. You're making alcohol and then selling it. And there's an area control element where you're taking over the neighborhoods in order to sell the alcohol to the neighborhoods, so long as you control them. And there's also a deck building element because there's a hand management. Every turn you're going to play actions using cards. The way they interwork is, I'm not going to say unique, but not common, I guess, for a typical board game. But I won't get into the details of that. Suffice to say, you're buying associates to put into your deck. You play through your whole deck, and then you do a refresh turn. And it's also got some tableau building elements, which largely come from the deals you can make, which is how you're going to get alcohol and guns as well. And also jobs. You can do jobs which go face up into a tableau and give you these ongoing benefits. So it's got a bit of everything. Deck building, hand management, tableau building, area control. And it's got really good ratings on BGG, but not that many reviews, actually. When I went to read what people were saying in their reviews, there was not that many that had actually written anything. I've been playing, so we played the Bloody Business expansion, which kind of feels like it's just trying to fix issues with the core game. So maybe that's already telling you what I think about things, but I'm going to play it one more time before I do a deep dive on it, if anyone's interested. So let me know down below. It is a 3.8 in weight on BGG, and for context, Arc Nova is a 3.78, Gloomhaven's a 3.92. So it's a pretty heavy game. It also says it takes 90 minutes to 2.5 hours. That's an outright lie. Aside from the fact that you could probably get the playtime down if the rulebook was better, and more on that if we do a full review. But it's a long game. Like, it's just a straight long game, and our playtimes have been quite long. We've played twice. We've tried to play twice at 4. Anyway, more on Scarface if you're interested. Let us know in the comments. You can always send us an email. Let me know on the Patreon Discord if you'd like to know more about Scarface. But otherwise, let's move on to one of Barry's.
Yeah, so a couple of quick ones to talk about, games we discussed before, and that game is Luthier. So this is from Powerson Games. designed by Dave Beck, and him and Paverson Games previously done Distilled, and co-designer this time, Abe Burson. The artist on this one is Vincent Dutrait and Guillaume Tavernier. So Mike spoke about this back in podcast number 4, back in the before times.
Wow!
A long time ago. We played it or demoed it at least at the UK Games Expo, but I only just got it delivered a couple of months back, and we've only just got it to the table. Not my game, one of my friends. It is a 1 to 4 player worker placement bidding game where players build and restore musical instruments for patrons and fight to control the first chair in an orchestra as sort of an area control element within the middle. If you want to know a bit more about how the rules are and how the game plays, by all means jump back to podcast number 4. You should get a good overview of it there from Mike. But the key things I think I just wanted to highlight from it, and things that you might want to know about whether you would like it or not, is that whilst there are, there's quite a limited number of spaces for the worker placement, the strength of the workers you send there determine the player order and giving you first pick. But the resolution of it is on a player's turn, they pick a spot they're in to resolve that space. And so there's a layer of interaction where other players can scupper your preferred order of resolution. If you really need something to go off first, you better hope that you're first in the player order to pick it, because if another player picks the one that you were hoping to trigger second, then you're not going to have what you were going to receive from that spot beforehand. So be aware that it's not a game of... You also don't know what the other players have bid, so it's not a game of perfect planning where you're competing for those spots. There'll be a bidding element by revealing the strength of those workers afterwards. Workers are placed face down, and you can potentially add to their strength with apprentices. One of the spots has a dice resolution mechanism for how good what you get is. You can improve those dice always by spending certain resources, and you can move up the track to get better dice, but know that your dice rolls by default can vary between like 0 and 6. Now usually you will have at least between 1 and 6, because you'll always have a 1 strength worker there, but some require you to get to at least 11 for that level 2, and so if you've got unlucky on your dice rolls and you don't have enough resources, you might get less than you wanted there as well. Again, wasn't a problem in my game. People always had enough resources to get to that middle level, which gives you a slightly better benefit if they wanted it. But again, just not a game of perfect planning. Understand that there are things that could go wrong, and there are things that other players can kind of mess with you in there. And then the last thing I thought was interesting about Luthier was that almost all of your resource gathering is done at a market during a market action that you can take by default every turn, which makes money the only real resource, because everything else you can kind of buy during that one movement on a turn. There are other spaces to get resources, but typically they also do something better than just give you resources, so you want to take them for that other action. So just know that money is even though there are 3 other resources, money's the main thing you care about. So I had a pretty good time with Luthier. It took 4 hours. It was quite a long game. It was a learning game. Nobody was really over the rules in quite the way you might want for a teaching game, where some players played it before and knows everything. We were kind of looking things up as we went. All 3 of the promo patrons came out almost immediately and were like, couldn't find them in the rule book, and it's like, oh, here's a little card with the extra rules on it. But it was good. I won a tiebreaker, 147 points or something. $7. There was $7 in it by the end, and that counts for less than 1 point. So it was really tight. Players were able to do quite a lot. I'm interested to see what kind of areas I can focus on in the future, or in a future game. Try and go down one path and break it, or try and just focus on the orchestra. Seemed to be quite strong for me. Other players ignored that, had better scoring end-game objectives. My end-game objectives were not good. I should not have picked the ones that I picked. But that's, again, a benefit of playing the game a second time. You'll kind of know what you're doing a little bit more there. So yeah, it was fun. But if you want a bigger overview and a better overview of actually the ins and outs of how the game plays, jump back to podcast 4.
Yeah, so I remember quite enjoying Luthier. How many players did you have? Because I
4.
Yeah, I think I personally get the impression it would be best of.
Let's see what Board Game Geek says to it. Best at 3.
Sure.
Which is reasonable. Less people to interfere with what you're up to. You can plan things a little better and not as long. Yeah, that all kind of makes sense to me. But I think 4 was fine. It was just long, but everybody had a good time. Unlike something like Inventions, where I've mentioned everybody hated it the whole time. All your actions make perfect sense. People could pick it up after we'd played the first round and a half. Everybody was like, okay, I know what I'm doing. Still might have messed it up, but they knew kind of what they were trying to achieve. So
yeah, well, you got to make instruments.
You got to make instruments, yeah. Repair instruments, build instruments, send them to the orchestra, do stuff. Please one's patrons, which I'm sure you know all about.
Please one's patrons, exactly right. But I think, I suppose on the topic just of the player count, I think the most interesting aspects of this game are the worker placement selection system, which is novel and different. It is a series of numbered tokens, and you're bidding on which actions you think are most important to you. And these are going to give you the right to pick things first and also do more. So the value you're bidding on a particular place will, for example, as Barry mentioned, everyone puts a worker down, but then somebody who's present there picks to trigger the space. But then you flip all the workers over and you actually get to activate the space in a turn order established by the values you all placed there. So if it's really important for you to get something there, you want to put a high number. And the game gives you a number of tools to play with this. There are tokens, and this I'm pretty sure I've played with the final copy of the game, but I could be remembering something from one of my prototype plays, so Barry will correct me if I'm wrong. But I believe that some of the tokens also are unlockable during the game and give you sort of strange asymmetric powers. And you also have these little apprentices that you can put in to adjust your numbers up. And how you use those, and you can also bluff. So you can put down like a low number, but then add an apprentice to make people think that you're playing a high number. Is it ever actually worth it doing that? I'm not convinced it is, because I don't think that there's too much mileage in sort of bluffing people. I don't think the game has enough sort of leniency. And this is where I'm getting to. Like, crafting the instruments is quite a tight logistical Euro type challenge. And so getting the right resources, getting the right instruments, managing your resources to produce the instruments in a timely manner so you can please your patrons who are getting more and more impatient as they wait for their instruments. That's all very logistical and Euro and tricky. And so being upset in a worker placement area can be quite a setback to that process. And so is it worth, for example, using an apprentice to bluff? Is it worth maybe not playing into the area that's best for you because you're trying to frustrate someone's plans somewhere else? I also don't, if they're bluffing or you see they've placed an apprentice down there, am I going to put a high number there to try and outbid them just to frustrate their plans? No, maybe not. I might play a high number in there because it's important to me, and their bluff might have incentivized me to play a bigger number or add some of my own apprentices, in which case I guess the bluff has had some impact, but I would probably have played a high number in there anyway because it was already important to me in the first place. So I don't know, but I do think that that's interesting. I think that sort of, is the poisoned cup in front of me kind of mindset is interesting, albeit I'm not sure if it's that well realized. But at least, and that's why I think for me the 4-player count is a bit more interesting because that's even more chaotic. But I can understand if you're a fan of traditional Euro games, you will probably find the 3-player version of that is enough chaos and enough flavor, and you don't need any more.
Yep. There's only one sort of notable circumstance where one player required a certain performance to complete their patron. They were outbid on that space. The one performance that would match from the market was taken, and then they had not backed up. There's another space where you can move your patron's impatience back to start again. They hadn't put a value high enough in that backup spot and they lost their patron and lost, sort of the 3 points and the points they would have earned for completing the patron, which actually they would have still been 2 points short at the end of the game, but it could have been decisive.
Mm-hmm. Are you tempted to pick it up after your play?
No, I don't feel the need necessarily to own this one. I do want to play it more though.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same camp. I'm happy to play this. I'd be happy to play it if someone brought it out. I can still remember it well enough to teach it. I actually don't think it's that bad, but I have played it about 3 times now. But again, still happy to play it more. I wouldn't pick it for 2. The game throws in a sort of faux player who puts out some faux tokens, but I think it really wants to be 3 or 4 player. There's a solo mode. I never tried it. You can find Mark, Not Board Gaming's review of that somewhere, I'm sure. Mark is the solo gamer, so I'll leave that to him. But, Barry is also a solo gamer, but not
don't film it.
Not in this case. Yeah, Barry didn't make a review, so...
yeah, you need your government ID if you want to see my videos.
Yeah, now you do, with the new age verification laws. They brought those in because of Barry, but we won't get into that now. There's not enough time. Anyway, moving on to the next game. We're going to move from a Euro game with a flavor of player interaction to a game that exists only with player interaction. There is no other form of gameplay here. I'm half kidding. This is Wroth, a 2025 game from Manny Tremblay, who you will know as the designer of Dice Throne. And the art is by Manny Tremblay, who did the art for Dice Throne. Manny has done a few other games, but they're sort of small boxes and upcoming stuff. But Manny did do all of Dice Throne and has largely been quite committed to that ever since its enormous success after the first Kickstarter many moons ago. There is now much Dice Throne. And the publisher of this one is Chip Theory Games. I believe Manny has actually signed up to do a fair amount of work with Chip Theory. And so there is another game coming out, a collaboration between them. The player count of Wroth is 1 to 4. It says 60 minutes. It is probably a 60-minute game. I think that's pretty accurate. I would be surprised if it went much over, and it could even be less, depending on how good people are at beating each other up. It is a 2.14 on BGG, which makes it even lighter than Wingspan. And what you're doing in Wroth is you're taking on the role of a fantasy race, and you're fighting over the peninsula known as, I'm going to say Drudgeon. I can't quite remember what it was called, but it is sort of generic fantasy landscape. They also call it a peninsula, even though it feels like a mountain when you're actually playing the game. And you are taking on the role of these asymmetrical races. It's pure area control. And each round is a quick dice draft, which is going to determine what actions everyone can take. And then it's just put pieces from your play area onto the board, and then try to maintain control of the areas. It is mostly deterministic, so combat is a simple exchange. One piece takes one piece. There are some things that can tick damage up or down, which I might mention in passing in a minute, but functionally it's just get the pieces onto the board, and then move the pieces around on the board, and then exchange one piece for another piece. Try to have the most pieces in an area at the end of the round, because each area has a scoring in it, and you're going to get those points at the end of the round. You're going to get extra points if you dominate, which means you're the only player there. And some areas have bonus actions that you'll get to take at the start of the next round. So, pure area control. The races are fairly asymmetrical, and this is where one of the sort of unique elements of the game is. Each race has 2 to 3 dice, and the dice are never rolled. They are just units, and the face of the die is the unit's hit points. You'll put them out on the battlefield every time they would take 1 damage, which would kill a normal unit. The dice ticks down a face. Some dice have many hit points, and some have much less. The dice come back to your play area, and you can play them again. They cost money. I can't remember what the money's called in the game. It's a green crystal, but I can't remember what it's called. But the money typically comes from controlling an area that produces money. Everyone just gets 1 per turn, and one of the actions you might get on the dice you draft is money. That's how you buy your special units. You put them out, and they've all got very unique flavors. The factions all play reasonably differently, which is nice. The other asymmetrical element is everyone gets a set of cards, and each card is a cool power. Many of them are passive. Some of them are once per game do this game-breakingly cool thing. And you pick one of those cards to have at the beginning of the game. Rest go back in the box. I think there's 4 per faction. And that's like largely it. The round is just, the first player throws all the dice. Everyone takes turn drafting a dice. Then there'll be one left over. Whoever's last in turn order, last in victory points gets to take that die. So it's a little catch-up mechanism. And then everyone takes turn playing a die, or you can play 2 dice to do a big action called Exodus. I think it's Exodus. So basically, you just spend 1 or 2 dice to do a power on your turn. You should have 3 dice because you get the 2 you draft plus 1 called the Fate die, which is a slightly sort of, everyone's got a Fate die. They're all the same, but it's a slightly wonkier action die. And the actions are super duper simple. They're just limited. There's sort of this logistical element where the die puts the soldiers from your player area into what's like a deployment zone, which is adjacent to many of the areas on the game board. It's a very tight game board. Everything is like 3 steps away, right? The furthest region is 3 steps away, but also they're all equidistant. So everyone's deployment zone is equally close to every other area. So the area that's 3 steps away is 3 steps from every player's deployment zone. So that's sort of like the one you have to journey to. Hopefully there's a lot of points there, but there might not be because the points values in each region are randomly determined at the beginning of the game. And so that might not be that valuable a region. But then if you're the only player that goes there, even if it's not that valuable, you'll get the bonus points for dominating. And also you might be able to hold it long term because each area is scored each round and the game ends when somebody hits 30 points. And so to an extent, it's up to everybody else to drag down the leaders. You always need to be punching up. It's a game, it's so fast because it's 60 minutes that if you're not punching up, someone will just win. They'll just run away with it and win. Fortunately, the game's short enough that that's not a big problem because, you kind of let that happen. You can do something about it, but sort of self-balancing and always sort of punching up is an important part of it. It's just really interactive and violent and punchy, and I really like it. I think it's really, really great. It's just so quick. It's also got this weird quirk where also like your troop pool is limited. It's like, I guess this is the expedition of 25 soldiers that were sent out to the peninsula by your faction. And so when a troop dies on the game board, it goes back to the game box and you can't place it again, which is pretty, like, it's not that big a deal, but like psychologically it's strange. Like, you're kind of like, oh God, am I going to lose all my troops? This is a thing.
You have none left. Chip theory games. What does the poker chip do?
So, all right, chip theory games. Had to find a way to put chips in this game because it doesn't have any. So there's two chips. One chip is their standard poker-sized chip, and it's the first player marker that goes around the table. And then those points values for the regions are all tiny little chips, about the size of a penny, but thicker. And so there's a 8 or 9 little chips as well used for randomizing those scoring things. So if you've ever seen Manny's art as well, it's quite cartoony, quite comic booky, very bombastic. This is, I guess, a slightly more artistic version of his art, but it's still got that vibe. And the game is bright. It's neon bright. It looks like a sort of 1980s sort of dystopian vision of neon cyberpunk future. Like, it's such a sort of interesting art choice. Personally, I really like it. I think it's really fun. It doesn't get in the way of usability for me. I think some people might find it off-putting. Certainly when I was playing it, people were generally drawn to it and found it really interesting to look at and didn't have any trouble understanding visually what was going on. But it is a very particular style, and I do think that, definitely worth looking at if you're considering the game. There is, as far as I can tell, not many issues with sort of color blindness, largely because most of its iconography, the soldiers are sculpts, so they're all different sculpts, even if you have trouble telling the colors apart. The dice all have symbols on them, faces on them, albeit some of the colors are a little bit similar across the factions. I'm thinking specifically of the red and orange faction, for example. The purple and blue faction might be another one, but at least you don't have to play with them because I think there's 6 factions in the box. So You can mix and match them however you like. There's 2 more expansions available, which are just additional factions, and that's it. There's no new mechanisms. But I personally really like the art. It's also got that chip theory production thing where like everything's neoprene mats. So you've got a little player board, it's a neoprene mat. You've got the main game board, it's a neoprene mat. You've got a score tracker, it's a neoprene mat. All the dice are those high quality sort of marble dice that they make. Then you've got the little chips. The one thing where it doesn't feel chip theory is the currency, which are the plastic transparent gems you find in like every game.
The game description mentions scenarios. Is that?
There are scenarios. I think they are for co-op only.
Okay.
So I haven't tried the co-op scenarios. I believe that you are playing against the AI and you're teaming up to accomplish some goals. I got this as a sort of, what I wanted was dudes on a map, sort of fighty war game. I wanted all the fun of like, get them, they're winning, without having to teach something for hours on end. And then, we don't get to the get them, they're winning part until we're 90 minutes in, And that's what I found with this. I don't know how much of a skill ceiling there is to it because it does feel pretty random and largely like I've seen some games, like I've played it a bunch now. I played it a few times when it was a prototype, and I played it 4 times since the Kickstarter arrived. I bought it, backed it because I like the prototype, and I've played it 4 times since then. And one game, there was just a crazy lead right off the bat. And we had to fight tooth and nail the whole game to sort of bring that lead back down. And we did manage in the final round to do that, albeit that player still won by like 1 point. But I don't think it's a problem. I don't think it's a problem in this game because it's so short and it's so punchy. And however it sort of plays out, it's still just fun. But it's fun in a way where it's like, okay, now we've got a natural alliance because we have to drag this player down. Oh, we've caught up to them. Now our alliance is falling apart and we're going to have to like come at each other, but maybe that's going to give this other player an opening to get back into the game. And it gets that sort of vibe, all of that just within a really quick time frame. And it's super easy to teach. And the rulebook wasn't perfect. I would have liked it to be slightly clearer, but it's not complex enough that it was a problem. We got answers to most of the stuff we needed to. And I think this is, again, like it would have been nice to have a little fact about the cards or something like that if they'd known about that. If they had, but we didn't have any real problems at all with any of the rules stuff. So it's just super quick to teach. You do a quick round. Every game we did a quick round the table to explain what our faction was doing and what our unique power in this game was. And then it was, like I said, we played it. I played it a bunch since I got it just because it's so fast to play.
Yeah, I did see you playing this at Expo as well. I didn't really catch the Kickstarter at all. Nobody I know has it, so I don't know when I'll get a chance to play, but next time I'm up, we'll get a game. We can get a couple more people involved.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really, it's 1 to 4. I know that actually I talked to Mark briefly because Mark got sent a promo copy because he reviewed the prototype, and he was saying that they've changed the solo mode and he was less happy with it in the final production. I don't want to put words in his mouth, so do check out his video if you are interested in the solo mode. Well, actually, I don't know if he'll cover it, but you can always, I don't know, ask him to somehow. I don't know, comment on his channel or something. I don't know. But my point is like that I don't know about the solo mode. I know that it has changed since Mark played it. I didn't buy it for the solo or the co-op. I just bought it for the punchy area control, and it does what I want. It's also like a really reasonably sized box. I've actually got it here. Bear with me. I'll show it on camera. This is the core game with both expansions in it. And it's travelable. I can take this places, and it's so quick to set up and so like quick and fast to play. So it's great. Like when I saw this box, I was really surprised by how small it was. I was like, I thought this would be big. The prototype box was much bigger.
Doesn't applaud anything that saves space on my shelves at this stage.
Yeah, exactly right. And that I can travel with. I've just been decanting Comet Blood and Sand into the new big box, and I'm like, I'm never going to play this now. This is too big to take anywhere.
Sad. Yeah, it looks good. I don't know. As it flew under my radar when it was out, and I don't know anybody's got it. But
And it might have flown under mine too.
I enjoy dice throwing, and I like, a game that is short and punchy and gives you a core experience of something. In this case, gang up on the leader, or everybody's working together, or you try and get ahead and eking out points in any kind of distilled manner. And that sounds pretty fun, so hopefully I will get a chance to play.
Yep, it'd be a good one to bring to a con as well, because it's easy to teach, and relatively easy to play. Mostly it's banter. Like, oh, I can't believe you're doing that. They're obviously winning. They're just going to get that other thing again. Leave me alone. Go over there.
No, when people can't see it though, Mike, when people can't see who's winning, why are you attacking me? I'm last place. I've got nothing.
Some people have different approaches. And do you know what? In a game that's like 4 or 5 hours long, that's a real problem. In a game that's 60 minutes long, it's silly and fun.
Yeah. Fair, sounds good. Cool. I'll go on to my second short one, because it's another game I have discussed previously. But in the last couple of weeks, I've received my adventure chest for Lost Ruins of Arnak. And in addition to being a big box storage, it also contains the next expansion, Twisted Paths, which will be available at retail at some point.
Oh no, this isn't a game from those people that support J.K. Rowling, is it?
It is, yes.
Oh
This
no.
is no wizards in
no.
it. Well, again, bought this before it was announced, so.
No money was transferred to transphobic people in the course of this production.
So Big Box is now here. If you pre-ordered it, there are a few copies out there in the wild still, should you want it, but they are going very quickly. I don't believe the Big Box is being reprinted anytime soon, at least, and possibly ever. So if you did want a storage solution, look for that at a retailer as quickly as you can. The expansion, as I said, will be out on its own, but I have managed to play some real-life games using the new maps. So I previously mentioned that I was playtesting the maps on the Check Games site. If you sign up for a playtester, sometimes you get asked to play these things. Some of the final test elements don't seem to have been implemented into the printed copies, but that could be because previous tests were better, or it could be that they didn't have time to change them after deciding towards the end of the playtest. I'm not sure, but the game is still good. The 2 new maps add different ways of playing. They are bigger boards. It's hard, you need more space. They have not chosen to make it the same size as the base game board. The new boards are larger, and it's becoming a bit of a hassle to fit it onto my table even. You'll need one of your game toppers to really make the most and have a comfortable play area to play the games, but it is what it is. And in the expansions, they have included not just the new maps with the new mechanisms. They have a Scoundrels of Skullport skull system, right? You've got dark tablets, which are worth negative points if you spend them at the end of the game, but you can use them for very powerful effects. And the more that are used, the more negative points they become by the end of the game. So if everybody's done them, suddenly each one that you've spent is negative 10 points, which is a game ender, unless everybody's used them equally. But if only a couple of people use them, then you can get them you could actually make points out of them, depending on what you're doing, in addition to getting the very powerful effects. The owl side of the board has a spider temple. The owl temple has a third token. You can move up the track to earn different bonuses, but at some point you have to sacrifice your investigation, your magnifying glass token to switch to a lantern. So you're going deeper into the caves with this lantern to get those bonuses. There's a few extra monsters, a few extra locations. The main board changes some of the values for what you're paying to go to certain spots, and it even includes stuff for the single player. The purple tiles, which are the sort of extreme difficulty for playing on solo, were previously available as a print and play. When the solo campaign became available as a print copy, they didn't include these purple tokens, but now, or these purple tiles, but now they have included them, and they've included tiles that are map specific, so that the AI, the automa, can do certain tempo specific actions as well. So there's a whole bunch of stuff put into there, and it's all just adds to the game. If you like Arnak, you're going to like the new maps. If you like the solo version of the game and the campaign version of the game, there's a few extra things in there for you. The only real downside is, once again, making an insert that does not fit the components, or does not fit the components well. There's only one segment, the Guardians, which are the monsters that guard the temples. It's slightly too small. If you take one or two out, it fits fine, but there's no discernible reason why they couldn't have just made the back slightly smaller to fit it, and so the lid goes on properly. Some people aren't necessarily having this problem. I have this problem. I have to take two Guardians out and just put them into the section on the side. Then everything fits and closes, and it's not a big deal. But when you paid for a box,
are you thinking about the level 1 or level 2 Guardians?
The Guardians are the same regardless of the level. So you've got the tempo, the sites, the level 1, level 2 sites, but the Guardians are just from a single pile.
I'm going to take your word for it. You've played a lot more than me. I don't remember.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Because I was just putting it away, because I did get this box in the end, largely because I had a really nice printed insert, for the core game and the first expansion, the Lost Leaders, Expedition Leaders. Yep. And then I got the Lost Expedition, which is the solo campaign or cooperative campaign that I wanted to play, but it didn't fit in the box that I had. So I picked this up and I just put everything in there, and I didn't have any problems. Actually, do you know, I had one problem, but it wasn't the one you're describing.
A different one.
Yeah. So the Guardians are, but isn't there two kinds of Guardian tokens? What am I thinking of then?
Just the sites, so the level 1, level 2 sites.
Right. But it's the Guardian tiles themselves with the curve in it that's don't fit into the box properly.
I don't think I'm the only person with this problem. It is, you can put them in and you can fit the lid on, but if you just press on it, you'll feel that it's actually too big, right? It's not sitting flush. You'll get away with it. It's not going to really damage anything, but they just don't sit nice. And if you take one or two out, it'll fit perfectly. Everything's flush again. And it was so close. So when I played DI the other day and I had to put the tiles away again, I was still super annoyed with what they've done. The good thing about the Arnak insert is it facilitates setup. So everything, you can pull out the box and you can be going a lot quicker. DEI does not do that. DEI is just basically open containers, and my problem with the tile storing section is that you can't store the tiles in order, so when you're looking at them you have to still go through them all, and you've got to put them in back to front, so you don't even know what the numbers are. Yeah. Super annoying.
Yeah. I mean, those tiles are super awkward, so they should have come up with a decent storage mechanism, especially when they were selling a box that was about storage. But just on the point of the Arnak box, actually the issue I had was the section where the player boards go. Mm-hmm. The player boards didn't seem to sit in there right.
So the player boards, so you've got the base set player boards, which sit on top of something. Yeah. Every other player board goes to the side. Of the box. No, I didn't have any problems with that. Following the instructions on the side. But again, it was also very frustrating. I'd put away 90% of the stuff. I'm like, I don't know where the rest of these things go. And then I just looked over, and actually the picture of where everything goes is on the side of the box, but that wasn't explained.
I missed that too, but I did print the document they put up on their website off. So there's also a printout that you can get. If you have not yet organized yours at home, you can go find that printout, or you can look on the side of the box. Yeah,
the side of the box was a saviour. No, I didn't have that problem. Everything fit okay. I forget what it sits on top of.
Yeah, it's fine. Like it wasn't a big issue. I got everything in there okay. I just felt like it didn't feel like they were sitting the way they were meant to, or it was just a bit wonky.
I agree. It's not an obvious place to put those boards for whatever reason. But mine's went there and it was fine.
Mm-hmm. Well,
who knows? Again, it could be tolerances, right?
Yeah.
And what's happened, they're all vacuum formed inserts. If there's slightly less plastic on one of them, and it doesn't go as deep, if it's slightly too wide because the doesn't press into the side the right way. I'm sure there's some issues that can come from actual production, but
in any case, I think y'all out there know whether you like Arnak or not. You will probably already got this. We already mentioned this already a long time ago. But it did get me hankered to play that solo campaign a bit, so I might have a look at that.
If you've not done it, it's great.
Yeah, you did mention that, so I am keen to give it a try. I do like Arnak at 2. I'm not a big fan of Arnak at more than 2, so I think I'd probably quite like it at 1. Albeit it's not my preferred player count, but
I know I played the campaign co-op. Had a good time. Very good, very nice. I'll do a double dunter back to back, and I'll talk about another new game that I've played, and that is Pergola. So this is by Rebel Studios, designed by, I don't know how to say a number of these Polish diacritics. So Michael Golubiowski, and Przemek Boczkowiak, and I apologise to whatever slander I've just done against your ancestors there. But the artist on this one is Karolina Kijak, who also did Meadow, and this is another sort of nature-themed game where the art kind of comes to life from it. So, a pergola, much like a gazebo, is unlikely to attack you. It's instead an outdoor frame or structure used to give some sort of structure to climbing or hanging plants, provides a focal point for your garden and outdoor space. And the game does match that to some degree, but it's a free-form token laying game for 1 to 4 players, in which players are tasked with decorating this pergola, growing plants in their garden, attracting insects to those plants, and players do this by open drafting tools from one of 4 action slots. Each tool will give you tiles for your garden, and you'll trigger the ability from the slot you've taken it from. So the variability comes that every turn, tools move down, but you take a tool from a slot, you get the resources, and then you trigger the ability from the space you've taken it from. So basically, over 15 turns, that is how things play out. The tokens you get can go on your board theoretically anywhere, but there are some rules as to how they must kind of join together. But you're allowed to make a lovely little scene on your board and have your garden how you like it. So the kind of resources you get can include, or will include, buttercups, hollyhocks, magnolia, lavender leaves, tree leaves, and then attracting butterflies, ladybugs, bees, dragonflies, and finally get some lanterns to jazz up your garden. The point of the game, or the way to win, is to collect sets of all these various resources, matching colours, placing insects on the preferred flower, putting things in the right position to earn the most points at the end of the game. Now, the 4 action slots allow players to do different things, move previously placed insects, which can either improve their points bonus or actually put them onto new flowers that you've put down. There's a bird, which goes and fetches leaves, which can bring insects with it, maybe move them. You have a little fountain, maybe it's not a fountain, but like a pond feature, where the water drips down, again bringing insects or disturbing insects so they fly over to your garden and land on your plants, or a frog that jumps around the lily pad, disturbing the dragonflies there, or moving other insects into your garden. So without going fully into the scoring, which is pretty much the game, if you get bees, you can unlock endgame scoring. You get points for filling buttercups with bees. You're going to collect different coloured leaves. There's 5 different colours. You're going to score points for each different colour. For each different set of 3 hollyhocks, blue, red, yellow, you're going to score points for sets, as well as having butterflies in them. Depending on the height of those flowers, are going to score you points. There's Magnolia. The taller you build your Magnolia, the more points it's worth. But then for every ladybug that's on a row, you'll score more points. So you've got to balance it between going high versus going wide. Lavender scores just for having it, but if you get 2 leaves, they generate a flower which can attract bees or dragonflies. The waterfall drips to the bottom, which also unlocks endgame scoring, and the frog can get dragonflies, which are straight up points. Right? The whole thing's just point salad. Whatever you do, you're getting points.
And are these scored during the game or all at the end?
Everything's at the end. So you don't have to track things as you go, but at the end, you'll be working out on a fairly complex little bit of card what everything's going to score for you as you go along. Fill in the little score pad, get your points. So the key selling point to my mind for Pergola is that this sort of scene building that you can do. It's lovely, it's sedate, it's really cozy. Sure, the game kind of suggests where you're putting things, and a few pieces really matter, right? The magnolia and the hollyhocks have to be placed in a specific way. Your first yellow can go anywhere, but your next yellow has to go above it. Your magnolias have to join on to the buds of the one before them, so it kind of grows out and up, and you get more points the higher it goes, as I mentioned, but you also want to be wide for scoring ladybugs on them. But the decision about where to put the pieces is often more agonising than deciding which piece you want, because everything's going to get you something.
Mm-hmm.
At the end, you know if you want to have an army of dragonflies staring down an army of bees, and you've got like a battle garden, you can kind of do that. You're not going to score the most points for it, but you can kind of do something like that. Or if you just want to collect flowers, or you just want to collect lavender, or you want to run a bee garden, you can focus on those things very much. You can build this nice little scene on your board. But obviously, if you want to do well, then you're thinking about your endgame bonuses and your points. The game also looks really nice on the board. It's got a little plant pot that holds all these tool tiles. So you've got your hoe and your fork and your rake and stuff like that. The resources sit in the middle of the board with the pond, and they've got all the different resources around the outside, and this sort of vacuum formed bit of plastic. So the game has really nice table presence. When you see it, that looks really pretty. And it was at Games Expo, and it was something I wanted to play there, but I didn't really get much of a chance. There's also a solo version of the game, which is near identical to the multiplayer version of the game. It does really well in converting how the multiplayer game works to how the solo game works, but that's probably because you're not really paying that much attention to what your opponent's doing anyway, so it's not too hard to convert. But it does provide you with 10 different challenges to overcome, such as using 4 lanterns for their bonus actions, or get 2 butterflies that score 3 points. Butterflies score different points depending on the level they're on. And there's an overall goal of scoring 1,000 points across all 10 challenges. So this game is likely to appeal to cozy gamers, nature gamers, people who are looking for a nice chill way to spend the evening. The game does a good job of giving you something for everything, for every action. You're always moving forward, you're always building up. But really, that's kind of where the game starts to fall apart. Right? Mm-hmm. So Pergola's on Board Game Arena, and it has the solo version on Board Game Arena. And you know me, because on Board Game Arena, I'm going to play it 50 times. And so that's what I've done. I've played 60 games of Pergola in the last 2 days. Only takes like 8 minutes to do it. And so I learned the game, and I went on and I played it, and I did what I thought was good, and fine. Scored 81 points. Okay, perfectly respected. Started going through the challenges. I did the first 4, scoring a bit better, doing 87, 96 points. Okay, getting there. But at this stage, after doing the first 4 challenges, I realised that the challenges were not challenges, right? Not really. In each of the games, I completed all 4 of those challenges without trying. They're just things you're doing anyway. And so it was like, well, that's not really an interesting part of the game. Where I should have been focusing on a strategy for the game and have me interacting with, say, the dragonflies in the lavender, or interacting with the bees in the endgame scoring, or interacting with the pond and the waterfall feature. It didn't matter. Like, everything I was doing, I would do in a normal game and I would get it anyway. And in fact, my last game, I completed 7 out of the 10 challenges in a single game just by playing to score points. And I just, it was fairly pointless. So don't get this for a solo challenge. It's a fun game. It's not a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
But then I was like, everything I'm doing is getting me roughly the same amount of points. So I thought, I'll test this theory. And I went into every game and I thought, I'm only going to do one thing.
Okay.
And I did that. And then, I got a little better at the game. I was scoring between 91 and 103. But then I was like, okay, I'm only going to pick the tile in action slot 2. And I did that. I scored 85 points. And I thought, I'm only going to pick the one in that action slot 3. And I did that. Scored 91 points.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then I did it. Well, what if I just did 4, 3, 2, 1 at random by rolling a d4? And I did that. I scored 92 points.
Oh, no.
And then I'm like, interesting. So I did get a bit better at the game because I understood the placement better and the rules better for this. And I played 8 games, rapid fire, trying to score as best I could, averaging 99 points almost. So, okay, better than my 80 odd points, but not significantly better than just playing at random.
Yeah.
And then I got a little bit, I found the strategy that was a little bit stronger. And so I just thought, well, regardless of whatever comes out, I'm just going to pick this going in, and every time I see one of those tiles, I'm going to take it. And I did that, and again, my score got a little bit better. I'm averaging 107 now over 8 games. Finally, I broke the back of it, and I figured out what the only way to win is, right? Or the way to score the most points is. And I can now get in the 110s, 119 is my highest score. I want to get 120 and then I can retire. But I'm pretty confident. I've looked through all the plays on Board Game Geek for what people are scoring. And in multiplayer, you're going to score between 95 and 105. And in single player, at best, until you figure out what I've done to break the game to get these extra 10 points, you're going to score 105 to 110. It's not big or clever what I'm doing. If that makes sense. You find something, once you figure it out, and you're like, interesting. But I think most people are going to score between 95 and 105 in a 3-4 player game, probably a 3-player game, maybe slightly less at 4. And it's not going to matter what they've done. It's just going to matter the sort of optimization of their actions. If they get a tile that works really well with the action they're taking, and that's going to be the difference between those 5-10 points. And it's very unsatisfying. Right? So there's a couple of things, caveat this with a couple of things. First of all, I've played it 60 times. If you play any game 60 times, you've got your money's worth. And I'm only paying £2.80 for Board Game Arena, so it's a great return on investment. But similarly, and on paper, it should be a game I like. I've spoken before, I want a game I can get better at. I have got better. Going from 81 points to 119 points is clearly an improvement.
Yeah, that's a 25% improvement, right?
Correct. But now
almost 50%.
Almost, yeah, not far off. But in each of the games between 100 points and 119 points that I played, other than that, the small change in what I was focusing on to get my points, because I didn't read the rules right and I didn't realise that bees in Buttercup scored me points, because there's so many things that score you points. I missed that bees in Buttercups got me points, and so I was wasting actions moving them to lavender. And then when I stopped doing that, my score went from 105 to 115, 120. And now that's it. There's no point in doing anything else ever. The game has a very low skill ceiling. And again, I appreciate that you at home are not going to play this game 50, 60 times to figure out what I've done. But you're also probably smarter than me, and you might figure it out in 5 games, right? And also, I wouldn't get those high scores because once other players know what you're doing, they'll draft those tiles to stop you from getting them. It's easier to manipulate in single player. But the fact that that does exist as a dominant strategy means that if everybody goes for that, not everybody can get it. And so then you come down to, it probably doesn't matter what you pick again. You might as well be random, and everybody's going to finish in that 95 to 105 point spread. And I've looked through all the plays on, there's 2,500 plays on Board Game Geek from the last month. A lot of them are on Board Game Arena. I've gone through them all and I've looked at all the scores, and everybody's first game, they're scoring 80s, 90s. And then everybody that's played it a few times, scoring between 95 and 105. And I refuse to believe that it matters what they've picked for those scores to get there. If what you're looking for is a lovely looking game where everybody's having a good time, building a little garden, Pergola's maybe for you. And if you like that, you might like Wingspan. I had a lot of these same issues with Wingspan when I first played, but I now own Wingspan and everything, and I enjoy Wingspan now, but not necessarily just for the gameplay. I found other things that I enjoy about playing Wingspan, and I like the changing objectives and things like that. So you might like that. You might like Meadow. You might like Forest Shuffle. These are the other games you might get along with, but know going into it that this is not a high skill game where your decisions are really going to impact things. You could also argue that I like games where small decisions impact a few points, right? So I may be arguing against myself at times. I just didn't find there was a lot of satisfaction in playing this game once I figured out that my decisions didn't really matter. So,
well, it's interesting because I noticed here that so it's one of those things where it's like, how many plays do you need to get from a game to make it worthwhile, right? And as you rightly point out, if you're getting 50 or 60 plays, then that's definitely worthwhile. Now, I mean, you could argue that, like, if you just bought a chess set, it would have been cheaper and you'd get even more than 60 plays out of it. And it's like, yeah, look, nobody's trying to design a game that is going to be, I mean, yeah, sure. Everyone wants to design chess. If you could just design chess again or Go again, then great, but we're here making these sort of more, not complex necessarily, because arguably chess and Go are very complex, but their complexity comes from the very broad skill ceiling, and what we're looking for here are more social games, maybe, for example, if you've not played much chess, you will always lose against someone who's played a lot more chess. We're looking for games where that cover a wide range of appeals, and this looks like a family game, so you don't want to have too much of a skill ceiling. Otherwise, every game, some person who's played the most will just be crushing it, and then it won't be very exciting. Having said that, as you've correctly identified, if the score doesn't seem to match the effort or the strategy or what someone's put in, then it's not satisfying. So you need to find that balance, right? Where the person who sort of seemed to come across the smartest strategy or made the cleverest plays, or at least, spotted something cool, got something out of it. They felt rewarded by the game. This obviously has the appearance of, I'm looking at it here, it's really cute art. There's lots of cute little meeples. The production's great. And actually, Rebel, who produced this, are quite a big Polish company. They primarily specialize in Polish localization. So they started out doing that and doing the Polish language distribution for a lot of very popular games. They have since started publishing their own titles, and notably one other title that Przemek has worked on, one of the designers has worked on, is Chronicles of Evil, which is a fantasy adventure game which I've played and actually have, and I quite enjoy. It's for kids, it's supposed to be sort of accessible, but it's a cooperative game, and it's sort of wave defense, and it's fun. I like it. I will happily play it, especially with, people who are going to get something out of it. Like if we're a bunch of hobby gamers, I'm probably not going to pick it, because we could pick something else. But it's got that broad appeal, which is nice. And one of the novelties in Chronicles of Evil is your adventurer's backpack can store a number of items, and the number of items you can carry are the amount you can fit in the backpack. And the way this manifests is a double-layer player board with the backpack carved out. And when you get an item, it's a tile, and you put it into the backpack. And as long as you can keep fitting things into the backpack, then the backpack's not at capacity. And the minute you try to put something in the backpack and it can't fit, you have to take something out. And then it's like, do you take a big thing or a little thing out? Because if you take a little thing out, the next time you're going to have to throw something else away. Or if you take a big thing out, you might make room for something you find in the future, especially if it's not a big thing you're using. So I thought that was really clever. I thought that was a really clever way to thematically make an inventory management. And there's a couple of areas where thematically it breaks down, like swords are not proportional to coins, for example. But just a really clever use of space and a way to get people thinking about sort of inventory management in these adventure games without making it burdensome, without making everything have like a weight where you have to worry about what hands it's in, or where it's kept, So pleasantly surprised to see that this game from the same designer was utilizing a more sort of free form approach, right? This depiction of the garden that you're putting out tiles in, and you've got some scope to design an aesthetic here, and there's some free form to it. And I was hoping that at the end of this review, you would tell me, oh, it's really cool because, you've got these ways of sort of scoring the garden or assessing the garden that are creative or innovative. And so to hear that it's all just kind of, sort of very rote Euro scoring, and the placement of things is sort of vaguely important but not really important, is disappointing. Did you ever play Picture Perfect?
Is that the one where you got to move things in the scene?
Yeah, and you take a photo at the end and score it.
I never heard of it.
Okay.
I've not played it.
So I
know what you're on about, but I've never played it.
Yeah, in Picture Perfect, you've got a series of sort of standees that you're moving around to try and sort of set up some objectives. It's like so-and-so doesn't want to be next to so-and-so, but wants to be next to so-and-so. So-and-so wants to be next to this person and 2 people away from the dog, And so then at the end of the game, you take an actual photo with your smartphone or your camera or whatever, and then you check that photo against the objectives, right? So it's sort of using this idea of physical space to create a game. And it's very clever. It's not set the world on fire. I guess, people maybe just prefer traditional games with more familiar scoring. I don't know. But I thought Picture Perfect was a fun and novel game that tried to do something different. This, I think, could have benefited from something like that. And I'm a little disappointed to see it looks like they got like 90% there to something sort of weird and innovative or interesting, where you've got like this open garden that you can design, but then in the end, the scoring is just going to be like, make sure the bees are in the right place and count the number of ladybirds you got, instead of, I don't know, something more creative.
Yeah, I mean, even a decision on, whether you hang the buttercups from the pergola or put them in the tree, like there could be something there, but, you're looking for sets of blue and pink buttercups. You're looking for sets of yellow, red and blue hollyhocks.
And it's okay to have that, but have something else too.
Yeah, the spatial element is just, they could have easily just been normal tiles, and you put them, you stack them on top of each other in whatever way. The idea about being able to build a garden was interesting. There's probably actually not enough different stuff. Like, you're always going to want to hang your buttercups on the pergola. You're always going to grow your flowers from the ground up. But you can kind of, you move them around the scene, and you can put them, your lavender towards the back of your garden. You could have a couple of lanterns hanging from the tree, or you could have a couple floating off. You could, your birds bringing leaves over. If you wanted to build that around your birdhouse, fine, but you could also put them on the trees. There's 3 different coloured kind of trees there that you could build them on, and you could have a rainbow colour, a gradient coming in, red, orange, yellow, green, bright yellow, to do something with, and you can make something very pleasant. But as a game, I don't know. Whilst I have played it 60 times, 40 of those games were specifically either I'm just going to do this one thing and focus 100% on it and see what my score is, or I think this is the best way of scoring points. What if I just did that to the exception of everything else, until I eventually got to the point where I feel like I couldn't find anybody else that scored more than 111 out of those 2,500 games. So I'm feeling pretty good, 119. But I definitely could have had 120 if I just made one last decision. If I could undo the leaf that I chose. But it doesn't. Once you picked it, you've got to use it. I could have had 120, and that's once I've got 120, I can retire. I don't think there's anything more to be seen in that game. So yes, like, I would not have played it as much as I have did it not just take 5 minutes on Board Game Arena. and I also probably wouldn't have seen the flaws as I perceive them in quite the same way had I not just played sort of 5 games back to back and realised it doesn't matter what I do. My score is roughly the same every time I do any specific strategy.
I think this is sort of a challenge for developers and designers now because, I think looking at the game, it's entirely, I guess, what you want, what you're designing and what your sort of market is. But I've got plenty of, Euros where we're going to get to the end and we're just going to count up a bunch of points. We did that in Wild Gardens. We're just walking along a path. We're doing contract fulfillment to fulfill other contracts. And at the end, we're going to count up points, that we get points from cards and that, so it's not point salad, but ultimately at the end, it's all just fulfill the requirements to score the most points at the end, and I would encourage, I suppose, more creative objective setting for the players in game design generally. And in this game, I'm particularly drawn to that desire simply because of the creative sort of player board and the nature of the tile placement on the player board. And it looks like ultimately the tiles are largely just being used to track how effectively you've fulfilled criteria that you've been set to score the most points. And that's a shame because I think some more creative way of scoring or, whatever form it takes would have been nice, because at the end of the day, I think if I got to the end of this lovely looking game and the production does look really nice, and I'm just counting up ladybirds to work out whether I got 15 or 18 points, it's going to be, to me, that's going to be a bit disappointing.
Yeah. Well, we can give it a go later, but I think it will have a market, and I think people will enjoy it. Sure. I'm just saying, here's what I've discovered.
Well, you'll know whether a sort of a cozy Euro with uninspired scoring but a beautiful presentation and lovely tiles is in your wheelhouse.
Right. What's the headline game? What's getting the middle space on the shelf in the thumbnail?
You spotted that. So this is it on the hotness still? It is number 1 on the hotness as recording this. Yes, that's it. I did it. I did the thing you all asked me to do and covered something people are excited about. This is Vantage from Stonemaier Games. So I'm not a massive fan of Stonemaier Games necessarily. There's a lot of people who are a big fan of the company, and they've got what's called a Champions program where you get a discount and early delivery. And there's a lot of people that really like their games and have sort of followed that and will back all of their products. I'm not a Stonemaier champion. I will buy their games if I think they look interesting. I have largely been disappointed by their games. However, I do appreciate that Jamie Stegmaier, who is the designer of this game, the operator of the company, and develops a lot of their other titles, is generally what I think a positive force in the industry. There's a lot about Jamie I like. He puts out a lot of useful blogs, a lot of useful industry commentary, a lot of useful sort of industry guidelines, sort of guides to, getting your board games published and things like that. I do think there's some fundamentals about his design philosophy I disagree with. Having said that, he's got a successful board game company and a bunch of credits to his name, which I do not. Jamie is the designer of Scythe, Viticulture, Red Rising, Tapestry, Charterstone, Euphoria, and Vantage now. Stonemaier Games have, in addition to publishing all of those, recently announced they're going to republish Tokaido. They also published the Span games, all 3 Span games, amongst others. And so, this is an interesting one that falls into that category of designed by Jamie and published by Stonemaier. It's been a little while, actually, I think, since Jamie's had one of his own designs coming out of the company. Well, unless you count Rolling Realms, which I didn't count, but that's mainly because it's tiny and I don't know anything about it. So it's unfair of me to dismiss that. You have Rolling Realms. Is it as tiny as I thought?
It's bigger now. Like they've now got 40 different games with cards, and they had the Redux. So it went from a fairly small box to a medium box, and if you get all the expansions, good luck fitting that into anything other than a full-size box.
And you like it?
Yeah, for the most part. It's just a roll and write.
Oh, that's why I was so dismissive. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's each card's a mini game. It's fine.
So we will. That's interesting, actually. So we'll talk more about that. Maybe. Well, no, we won't. But interesting that you mentioned that the cards are mini games. And on the topic of Vantage, then it is three artists: Valentina Filick, whose only credit is Vantage; Soren Medding, who's also credited on Pulsar 2849, Pictomania, That's a Question, Picture Perfect, and Emilian Rotival, who's also credited on For Sale, Ancient Knowledge, Popcorn, Terra Stories, amongst others. And the player count for Vantage is 1 to 6. The community reckons best at 2. I've played it twice solo and once at 2. So I can't comment on higher counts. I think it would probably be fine. I think we can talk a bit more about that as the discussion progresses. It says 2 to 3 hour playtime. That's pretty accurate. Depending on how collaborative and how many players you've got, it will go up. The playtime will be pretty proportional to how much you talk about everything, and you don't have to talk about everything. You don't have to talk about anything, but you can, and it's fun too, so you might, and that might add game time. The weight is 2.4. For reference, Wingspan is 2.47, and Pandemic is 2.4. The community are a bit split on this, and I'll come back to this point because this is going to feed into something I'm talking about later, but 48% ranked it at 2, 41% ranked it at 3. So that's why it's landed on 2.4. And Vantage it's a story game. It is a story-driven game. It is a choose-your-own adventure novel. It is an exploration game. It's vaguely a survival game. So the actual game, when you receive it, is a big old box of cards. That's basically it. It's a big old box of cards and a bunch of choose-your-own adventure books. And you do not need an app to play. There is a website that will allow you to shortcut the adventure books if you'd rather just look things up with numbers, but they wanted it to be screen-free, so you can just look things up in the books as well. On my 2-player game, I played with someone who's dyslexic, so they used the website because I do think that the storybook entries are quite small and a little easy to get confused if you have trouble with text. So that's something to keep in mind. But and the app itself had an issue where you have to select icons, and the icons are not entirely matching the ones in the game, which is probably an easy fix for them to update when they get a chance. But it otherwise works perfectly fine. What you're doing in the game is you are on a spaceship, and there may be one person or up to 6 people on that spaceship, depending on your player count. And the spaceship is coming to a planet, and there's, I think, some acknowledgement that something's happened on Earth, although it's pretty ambiguous. There's some entity called the Traveler who you know or maybe have encountered. There's some kind of interstellar being. In my mind, they were a bit like a sort of a cross between C-3PO and Q. You know, helpful like C-3PO, but enigmatic and omnipresent like Q. So they vaguely come up. Vaguely.
Mixing franchises.
Yeah. And to be fair to Jamie, and I think this has come up because of I don't know if anyone remembers this, but Red Rising, the card board game, card game, was accused of having ripped off Fantasy Realms. And Jamie had put into the rulebook, thanks for the inspiration from games like Fantasy Realms. And people were not satisfied that was sufficient acknowledgement. Or maybe he didn't put it in, and then he put it on a blog, and then they later put it in a future prints of the rulebook. I can't remember. But Jamie clearly learned from that, because this has a lot of acknowledgements at the back. Like, thanks to all of these games for inspiring me. To be fair, I don't think that this is as close in proximity to any of the games he credits as Red Rising was to Fantasy Realms. Mm-hmm. I mean, Red Rising really was Fantasy Realms with extra mechanisms attached, but I don't want to review Red Rising. Suffice to say, I don't know how different the actual card scoring is, because obviously Fantasy Realms is a game all about scoring cards, and how those cards interwork and score is the whole game. So if you've lifted those mechanisms wholesale and just printed them on cards with different art, that is plagiarism of the rules. Can't trademark rules, so technically that's fine so long as you change the art. But I can see why people would be upset about it. Having said that, if you've changed the way those interworkings work and the way those cards score, then you've changed the rules probably enough for that to be okay. But then also there was a bunch of extra mechanisms that interworked with that game. So I don't know if that was actually a fair criticism. However, the Red Rising card game is also just not good. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. You can get it dirt cheap on the secondhand market.
I didn't hate it when I played it, but
well,
I've only played it once. I'm not going back to it.
Yeah. And, I didn't hate it, but also it wasn't good. Like, it's just not good. It's too long. The extra mechanisms don't add anything. Fantasy Realms is just better, and it's got a scoring app now, which is great. So just play Fantasy Realms, and then you don't even have to be upset that Red Rising might have ripped it off. But that's fine. Look, we're not talking about that anyway. We're talking about Vantage. And in Vantage, you're on this spaceship, and it crashes on this planet where you've been sort of guided by this enigmatic traveler character, and it is sort of randomly seeded. So you get one of the 6 characters to play as, and the 6 characters are loosely associated with the sort of 6 things that happen in the world. This is where this is a very thematic game. It's driven by theme, and everything is about the theme and the vibes and the feel, And so what you've got are these 6 concepts that summarize your approach to the world and the way things work. You've got move, look, engage, help, take, and overpower. And each of your characters is going to be sort of like better at one of those things to start with. And you're probably going to use that a lot. So if you're the captain, Jules, who's good at moving, and I'm going to try not to spoil anything. This is going to be really tough without spoilers, by the way. But we'll maybe get into that in a minute. But Jules, the captain who's good at move, well, you move all the time. You need to move around. It's an exploration game. So move is really helpful. Tina, the Marine, is really good at overpower. And overpower is a lot less simple to intuit when it isn't good to do or appropriate to use. So I do recommend, if you're not sure who to pick to start with, picking someone who does things that you think you will always be safe with Jules, and you'll always be safe with Soren the Navigator, because moving and looking around are 2 things you need to do in an exploration game. You'll probably be safe with Ira the Medic, because helping is generally a nice thing to do, and you're probably not going to get into trouble for helping. Engage. I haven't tried the character that does engage yet, but Tina the Marine, and I can't remember who does take either, but those are the 2 that are a little less intuitive, and so probably not great to start with. But your character will get a random position somewhere on the planet's surface to land. And I've seen people compare this to the 7th Citadel and 7th Continent, because there is a actual landscape set across a series of cards. There's about 600 of them, I think, cards that make up the landscape. So you will get to know the planet. On subsequent plays, you will find areas you recognize. They will be consistently present, and always the same stuff will happen there. So you will get a random place to be put on the planet, and then you will literally just set off. And if you're playing a multiplayer game, you will both be in different locations, and you could be very close together, and you could be very far apart. You will have a mission that is also randomly given to you. And that mission, there's a whole bunch of different ones. I'm not going to say what any of them are, but they're very basic things, right? And some of them are more straightforward to do than others, but you will have a mission, and then when you're on the planet, once you start doing things, you will start to collect destinies. And destinies are, I guess, sort of the future you envisage for yourself now that your ship's crashed. Maybe you want your destiny to be return home. Maybe you want it to be make a new life here on the planet. Maybe it's some other thing that you found out about on the planet. There's all kinds of different destinies. You can have more than one, but you'll only fulfill one. So if you fulfill either your mission or your destiny, you get the good ending. And if you fill them both, you get epic ending. And so that's sort of how the game length is determined, right? And you can stop when you've fulfilled either. You can just stop and go, I'm done. you'll go to a little book that'll tell you what happens when you complete your specific mission or destiny. You'll read a little blurb of text, and then you'll just be done. Or you can keep playing to try and do the other thing if you want. So the game length is highly variable. You can also sort of fail. The fail state is pretty generous, I would say. Case in point, there are 4 difficulties to start with. And I can't remember what they're all called, but I remember the 2 hardest are Daring and Brazen. So Daring is the penultimate hardest, and Brazen is the most difficult. The game recommends you start on Daring, but it says also different players can start on different difficulties. That's fine. This is really about how much time, health, and morale you start with. So these are 3 tracks that go up to 6, and if any one of them bottoms out, then you will suffer a fail state, and you will go and read a secret chapter of text, and it may well be the end of the game for you. If you play on Daring, you start with 4 of everything, and if you play on Brazen, 3 of everything. Everything else just gives you more of those to start with, and really the game is how you utilize those resources. So as you explore the world and you discover things and find new locations, you will collect cards, little cards. So I mentioned there's about 700 locations. There's about just under 1,000 standard size cards, and they're all stuff, people you'll find, creatures you'll meet, stuff you'll build, items you'll make. And they go into a grid around your character card. So you get 8 things that you can carry, and then sometimes they'll let you carry additional cards in your reserve, which is functionally things in your backpack, or maybe in a vehicle that you've made that you're keeping. And so you start off being able to carry 1 card in reserve. So total of 9 cards, but you can carry more in reserve later on. But you can't use them. You can only use the 8 cards equipped to your character at any given moment. And what you will do is every time you have to do a thing, you'll throw challenge dice. And challenge dice will maybe blank out, or maybe they'll cost you time, morale, or health. And once you throw the dice, the challenge dice, you'll then fit them into this grid of cards. All the cards have places to put the dice, and generally speaking, putting the dice into the grid is good. You'll get to amass little tokens on the cards, which will let you do cool things with the cards. So you want to place the dice if you can, and you also want to place the dice if you can, because when you can't place them, they go into a sort of expended pool, and they punish you. You lose the icon shown on the die. And once the challenge dice pool is empty, all of those dice from your grid and your discard pile reset. And that's sort of how the mechanisms of the game function. This is the gamification of the choose your own adventure story. So you're really just trying to get through this world without bottoming out any of those resources, any of those 3 tracks. Occasionally you'll enter an area that might be dangerous and you might lose something like health or whatever. And so you have to be mindful about exploring those areas, maybe try to find an item that'll help you explore, or just press on regardless and try and find some way to recover later. If any one player bottoms out, you go to this fail state, which is pretty generous. That's all I'm going to say. I don't want to spoil it for anyone, but let's just say it's actually quite difficult to fail the game outright. So the very first time I played, I started off on Daring, solo play, and I won the epic ending. The second time I played as Tina the Marine because I thought she looked cool. I'd also never used overpower actions in my first play because generally I thought they were quite mean and I didn't want to do that. I took Tina the Marine, put her on Brazen, still got an epic victory. And I didn't actually achieve the fail state once in that second play. So that is to say I didn't bottom out any of my tracks at all.
Yeah.
So it's not a really difficult game. There is, I think, enough jeopardy created by this system of dice that it feels like there's a game there. But I think if you were to start really deconstructing it, you'd probably find that it's very sort of generous or it's not that problematic to sort of manage it carefully, right? The other thing is the game is most threatening when you first land because you've got 1 card in your grid and that's it. It's your character card. Managing the dice is hard. Every throw is risky. As you progress, you amass power, and because of the way the game world works, because it's sort of open to exploration, now some areas are more dangerous than others, some things are more dangerous than others to do, but it's a flat world. Like it's not like, you're checking your level and adjusting the challenge rating of enemies or anything that complex. There's none of that. So, if you're in an easily traversable area of the world, whether you're right at the beginning of the game all by yourself or way later on, that level stayed the same. So if it's much later on, your power escalation is off the charts and everything's pretty easy to deal with. So while you'll feel good about how you've survived and amassed this cool sort of grid of cards that are helping you manage all these challenges, the game will, by that point, largely be about exploration and discovering things rather than actually having to deal with any of the challenges in the world. Now, you could make a boob and get a really bad dice roll, and if you weren't careful about dealing with it, it could take you out of the game. But if you are managing those mechanisms effectively, I think it's fairly straightforward. There was a point in one of my games where I had to stop what I was doing in terms of exploration and trying to achieve my mission and my destiny and just do something else entirely because I had to solve a problem and I couldn't continue till I solved that problem. And so all I could do was actions on the cards I had. Now, this is one of the things about the game because really on your turn, you're basically acting in your environment or acting with the stuff you've collected and built. And there's actions on both, and you can do one of those actions on your turn, and that's it. And so I had up until that point be largely interacting with the environment, so I stopped and I started interacting with the cards on my player board, and I probably spent a good portion of the time I spent playing the game just upgrading stuff and building stuff and trying to find some way to solve my problem by working on the things I had in front of me. The game gives you lots of tools for dealing with things. You can always find sort of something to do that's useful, some way to get around something. If you're playing a multiplayer game, there's even more options because you've got a whole nother player with a whole nother set of cards, and there's some interplay between your two grids. Like the concept in the multiplayer game is that you've always got radio communications. So you can always talk to the other player freely, no matter where you are on the planet, but everyone's got a location card that's kept in a stand in front of them that nobody else can see. So only you can see the locations you're in. So if you want to know where the other person is, you just have to sort of describe it to them. Now, every location card is numbered, and when you move locations, you have to get another numbered card. You can kind of get a sense of where people are based on the numbers they're picking up. But you'll never know exactly where each number relates to each number until you've actually mapped it out for multiple plays, if that's how you want to play. Mm-hmm. If you don't want to catalog things and try to logistically coordinate it like that, you can just not write any of the numbers down, and then unless you've got incredible retention, you'll never really know. And you'll just have to go on vibes and vague discussion. So what's really interesting is I had these two really successful solo games. Then I wanted to play it multiplayer because I was going to talk about it here. And I was concerned about downtime. I was concerned about what another player would add necessarily to the experience. And I discovered two sort of things. One, downtime's fine. The actions are so quick. The biggest sort of issue with the game, I suppose, in terms of just tempo, is every turn you're probably putting a card away and getting a new card out. Mm-hmm. And that just takes a bit of time. Now, they've tried to get around it in the rulebook by saying one person's in charge of the box and they're doing all the cards, which is fine. So the turns are really, really quick. Getting that card thing's a bit of a pain, but it's not too bad in the end. You won't always be changing a card every turn, but most turns you will. I think that it would get worse every time you added a player. I don't necessarily think that additional players are going to sort of add much to the experience beyond the fun social elements. That's sort of what I was coming back around to when I was talking about my initial play, sort of having to stop and do that other stuff for a while. That was when I really realized this is a game that doesn't really care how goal-oriented I am, and it doesn't really care, necessarily whether I do the mission or the destiny or anything like that. There's no score, there's no points. And ultimately, it's about how invested you are in the stuff you're making and the story you're discovering and the things you're unveiling. And if you're not getting invested in the situation and the world and the characters, then you're not going to find any enjoyment here, right? Whereas if you are, or you're the kind of person that enjoys revealing the next card in the event deck, enjoys, exploration for the sake of it when it costs you resources in a game and you're like, I definitely shouldn't do this exploration, but I'm going to do it anyway because I want to know what happens. If that's the kind of player you are, you'll find a lot to enjoy here, I think. And I think you'll get that for more players as well, because more people will be discovering stuff and they'll be sharing those stories. You know, at the end of a game like this, sometimes when the game's over and everyone suddenly starts talking about it, like, oh, this was my experience. This is what I was doing. This is what I was doing. You know, it's a bit like that during the game, right? Because people are sort of telling you about what they see, what their options are, and then you can also see their grid and they can see your grid, and some of the placement spaces can be shared. So they're like, oh, I'm doing a look and I've got this health damage. Can anyone help me out? And you're like, yes, I've got a space for that in my grid. You know, or, oh, if I spin this cube, I can turn on the space for you, you know, stuff like that. So there's a little bit of player interaction there. It is, I think, largely just a nod to keep people a bit engaged, because this game feels like it could just be a solo game. You know, it also didn't feel bad at 2. I saw some folks down the club playing it at like 5, and they seemed to have a good time. So I think that it probably scales reasonably well. That's the impression I get from the 2-player game. Now, I wanted to come back to the weight, because it's a 2.4, which is less than Wingspan, which is probably accurate in one way, because technically the rules are short, the overhead's not high, there's not too much ambiguity, generally the cars are very easy to understand. It does this thing at the beginning, which is very Jamie Stegmaier, where it says, if there is any ambiguity, just rule in the way that's most fun. I want you to all have fun, so just make the most fun call, and also try to keep it thematic if you can. It also says things like, if you're in a location and you build something like a bridge as your action, we don't have any way of marking that you've done that, because it doesn't use keywords and it doesn't use sort of trackable information around cards. So it says you can take notes, but you don't have to, which is accurate. And so if somebody's, you know, on a location, let's say they're in a forest, we'll call it the magic forest. They're in the magic forest and they build a bridge.
Yep.
Then you just have to remember, if somebody else comes across the magic forest and they're in the same magic forest location, that there's a bridge there now, you know? And so if you take the same action to make a bridge, you're suddenly like, oh, the bridge was already here. I have to do something else. So it's like, try to remember thematically that things have happened over the course of the game and react to them if you get a chance. Now, that will depend entirely on whether people ever actually get to the same locations. And also, there's not really any incentive to meet up and travel together in the game. It can be helpful, but it's not really necessary or intended to be doing that. And there's also advantages to splitting up. So I'm surprised by the weight, because the game is very thematically driven. And it's very, I don't want to say abstract, because when we talk about abstract gaming, we're talking specifically about games that are not thematic, right? So this is the opposite of abstract. But what it does do is it uses a lot of sort of game mechanisms to convey the sort of the theme and the world, and it asks you to sort of buy into that conceptually, you know? I'm trying to give examples without spoiling it, but you could stop and do something momentous, you know? And like, if you're playing the 2-player game, it's like, oh, what did you do on your turn? Oh, I just walked over there. What did you do? Oh, I built a village. And it's like, oh, are we even living in the same timeline here? And so there are some thematical disconnects there, just in terms of sort of timelines and the way those things match up. Because it was my 3rd game when I played the 2-player game, right? And we had a mission to do a thing, and we had discovered a destiny, which was do another thing. And I was largely doing something completely separate. Because of where I'd landed and what I'd found, I was just doing my own kind of thing. And the player I was playing with was like, you are not helping. You are not helping to accomplish our mission. And to be fair, the destiny was one I'd discovered. So when I found that, I'd at least contributed part of it to having done the destiny. But they'd also found a part of the destiny and were doing that as well. And they were like, I've done all this stuff. The thing is, while they were doing the mission in the destiny, they were not really having a great time. Not because they weren't enjoying the game, but because they weren't focused on exploring the natural opportunities the game had presented them with. They were being so goal-oriented, they were missing easy wins in order to fulfill what they perceived to be the actual main drive of the game. And as a result, they'd actually sort of failed to build up a board that was really good at dealing with challenge dice, and also actually had come across one of the few negative cards I've ever actually seen in the game. Now, the game is very generous. You know, it largely seems to just give you nice things. It is a game of failing forward. So when you take an action and you roll those challenge dice, you will never fail to get the same result from the action. The action will always play out in exactly the same way, no matter what you rolled and how much damage you took. You still get the same results of that action unless you tapped one of your things into 0, in which case, I mean, you will still get the action if you are allowed to continue playing. That's all I'll say about that. It's generally a game of just choosing what you explore, and not even in terms of the time resource that you're tracking on your player board, but in terms of what you want to do with your time in real life playing this game. So you've got X amount of time to play Vantage, so what do you really want to do? And so I think that in the end, we did sort of fail that 2-player game. And not because the game forced us to stop playing, but because we ran out of time in real life to play it, and we had not accomplished our mission or our destiny, right? And so we had to put it away. Could we have accomplished it if we'd been more goal-oriented? Maybe, maybe not. But it was really about the sort of the fun we were having. And I think the thing is, it is a game where you kind of just have to go in with this sort of vibe, sort of follow where the game's taking you a bit, maybe try to do a bit of your own stuff, but ultimately, you've not really got much agency, over... I mean, it feels like you've got a lot of agency, right? But, it's at most you're making decisions because either that's interesting to you and you think you can do it, or B, that's easy for your character to do at the moment, and it's going to cost you very little to get some kind of reward. I think that the reason I was talking about the weight was that I do think that the game presents as a game. It presents as a game with game elements, rolling dice, managing these 3-track resource tracks, managing cubes on your cards. The cards have a lot of little elements, for you and I, dead ass simple. You put a challenge die on the card. Maybe you have to pay a cube. Maybe you get a cube. You can only put dice there if they're part of certain checks or if they're associated with certain types of resources and things. And so there's all these criteria and requirements and things. And it's all very abstract, right? But in the traditional sense of abstract, it is the idea of the overpower action, right? In the game, it never uses the term overpower. It shows all the overpower actions in a red banner, and then there'll be things like, attack, defend, subdue, and giving you a flavor of what it is. And so a lot of the game is like that. So the weight is not high. There's not a lot of rules overhead. The cards, there's a little bit of learning of the iconography and the cards and how they work. But what I'm trying to say is that it can be difficult if you're not used to sort of gamification of conceptual things and thematic things. It can be quite difficult, I think, to get your head around. And certainly it's difficult to get your head around what the game wants from you. I love this sort of thing. I love choose your own adventure books. I love just finding things out. I love just flipping over cards to see what happens. This is exactly the kind of game, I don't play solo games. I'll play this solo. I'll play it solo again. I'm excited to play this solo again, which is because it's exactly the kind of thing I like. And if I had more time, I would play Sleeping Gods instead. I loved Sleeping Gods. I really want to go back to that world and revisit it. But this scratches a lot of the same itches, and it's 3 hours long. And it's much quicker to set up, and I'm immediately into it, and there's less rules overhead, so I don't have to remember a bunch of stuff. I just get to start flipping cards and discovering things right away, And so, for me, this is a really great game. I love it. I had in my second game 2 destinies, and I almost wanted to pursue the second destiny because I thought it would be more thematic and fun to pursue, even though it was way harder to do. I could get that epic victory right now with the first destiny, or I could play for another hour and a half and try and do the second destiny, just because I felt like for the character that I've sort of built up in this world, the character Tina the Marine in her current iteration in this world I'm playing as, what she's been through, the second destiny makes more sense, even though it's going to take me another 90 minutes if I get to do it at all, and I'm going to have to try and figure out how to do it. I know I can do it somewhere because I saw something on some other game, and now I can go over there and find that thing and maybe do this destiny, but it's going to be way harder. But I think also now that she knows about that, maybe that's what she would want to do because that feels more fitting than this other Destiny that I've got, you know? And that's the kind of game it is. You know, it's like it says it's a sandbox game, and it really is like sort of bring your own vibe. The end game text is tiny and very limited. I've complained about sort of summary text in games that are much less about that, you know?
Yeah.
So to get to the end of like the epic win and get this tiny paragraph could feel bad. But for me in this game, it doesn't. And the reason it doesn't is because it feels so much more about the journey. And I found myself like leaving my future self a note. I was like, in this game, so-and-so did this, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this is how it ended up like this. And then I put that in the box and I'm like, that's a nice note to have. And I think that's, the game brings that out of you if you have that in you. And if you will enjoy that sort of thing.
Well, I did see this. Obviously, Stonemaier announced their games pretty much as they're ready. You can pre-order it a few weeks in advance. Had a quick look and I thought, I have similar opinions to the games as you do, and I wasn't going to rush into this. Now, I do have a friend who is a champion and they have bought this, so I may get an opportunity to play. I enjoy game books. I play game books quite often. I enjoy role-playing games as well. Play them quite often. So this could be the kind of game I would at least want to try. I don't know, just do you think it would be something that I would like? Based on our narrative games and games that have tried to gamify a story, and particularly ISS Vanguard, which you can see on the channel.
Mm-hmm.
Flick back a bit. Is the story stronger or weaker?
This is the key distinction between, say, ISS Vanguard, and let's talk about one we've both played, which is the Cthulhu Frozen North thing that you gave me.
Cthulhu Frozen North thing?
The Cthulhu Adventure book.
Oh, yeah. So the Call of Cthulhu Against the Frost.
Against the Frost, yeah. So we both played that.
Yeah.
So that's quite a good frame of reference. You can also find a video of us playing that on the channel if you want to have a look. Me and Michael, not Barry. And then also, I think Sleeping Gods is useful as a frame of reference. It's very different to ISS Vanguard in two ways. Obviously, it's very different to, say, Sleeping Gods and ISS Vanguard in the sense that it is short. Yeah. I mean, it's still not short. It's 2-3 hours, maybe a bit longer, especially if you're playing with someone whose familiarity with tableau card play, if they don't have a lot of experience with that sort of thing. It might take them a little while to sort of get their head around like how to read the actions and how to understand the actions. Also, it does something that I don't particularly like, which is it says you have to try to sort of imagine how difficult the actions will be, right? So sometimes that's really easy. Like, for example, you'll find the giant monster, and then you can run away or attack. And it's like, well, if I run away, that should be fairly easy. And if I attack, that should be fairly difficult. And then it says, and then you pick an option, you look it up in the storybook, and then it tells you how many challenge dice you need to roll. And that's how difficult it actually is, right? And I kind of wish they'd just put the challenge dice up front so you just knew how sort of difficult it would be. Or at least give you a range, like maybe have them red, yellow, and green, where green is 1 to 3 challenge dice and red is, 8+, right? Something like that. Because it is very abstract and sometimes it can be unintuitive. And I don't think it's necessarily thematic. I think if you were there, you would have, and you were in this role and you're inhabiting this role as this person, you would have some idea about how difficult these things would be, and where it is intended to be cryptic or surprising, just leave out the metric. So I described a traffic light system, just don't put that in. Anyway, that aside, ISS Vanguard is a rote narrative. It's a linear narrative. Now, there are branching paths, but they all take you back to the same points. Sleeping Gods is also a linear narrative, in many ways because you've got the inciting incident, you've got these sort of tentpole moments that happen over the course of the campaign, and then an ending which plays out slightly differently based on the course of the campaign, but largely is the same every time. Where Sleeping Gods and Vanguard differs is that, and I'm getting back to, this is relevant to Vantage, because Vanguard, although it's split paths, is not really sandboxy, right? It is do the mission, do the set number of missions. You can choose which missions you do, but whichever missions you do, they'll largely play out the same narratively. The only real difference, I mean, to be fair, some of them have different endings. So you go to planet B and it's a lava world, and maybe you turn off the lava and it freezes over and is destroyed and you can never go back. Or maybe you release the lava monster and now there's a big monster running around there every time you go back. Fine. So there are different outcomes, but ultimately they're all scripted, they're all wrote, and you'll trigger one of the things that they wrote that will happen, right? Sleeping Gods is kind of a halfway house because it's got these big tentpole moments, but then it's got these little rote narratives within it, and it's an open world sandbox that you might trip over one of these rote narratives, and the way you handle it might be differently. And it manages these sort of pathways, like you might find the monster village in Sleeping Gods, and then the monsters are like, you can help us, and you're like, no, I attack you, and now you write down keyword, monster enemy. And when you go back to the monster village, it's like, if you have this keyword, the monsters attack you, and now you start the monster war. And that's the plot you're doing. Whereas if you'd made friends with them, maybe there was like some mission they give you, and then you get monster allies, and it's sort of tracked with keywords. But also, you could have just ignored it and moved on and done none of those things. And also, there are just events that are sort of self-contained and they resolve. And you can go through the entire game and visit like one zone of Sleeping Gods, and there's so many zones. And you can be the explorer that goes across the world and sees many different things and never goes back to the same place. Or you can like live in one area and really develop a relationship with the events in that area. And that's really nice. Vantage kind of has that same thing. It's a sandbox. You can live in one area, one zone, and sort of just travel around the same zone. Now, what it does do is let you take one action per card. So in Vantage, you can't really just keep revisiting the same card and doing the same thing over and over again. It wants to move you on, but you can stay in the same sort of area and just keep sort of interacting with the same sort of vibes, or you can move all around the world and travel great distances. But what it doesn't do is, because it doesn't track keywords, it doesn't track sort of factions or characters, it doesn't track any ongoing effects other than the cards in your tableau, which are largely sort of self-contained tools and sort of creatures and friends you've made, but they're kind of self-contained. They don't interact with the world. Like, there's no one in the world that looks at your tableau and goes, oh, you've got Crypto the dog with you. You can go and visit the Fortress of Solitude now. Nothing does that. It is much more sort of a sense of like self-contained mini events, and you're largely sort of existing on vibes. Like maybe you wound up with a lot of equipment that allow you to travel great distances to really rough areas, and so you're this traveler now, and that's kind of your vibe. Or maybe you found these items that let you, mine, and mine ore and stuff. I'm making this up, by the way. Maybe this exists, maybe it doesn't. I don't know, but I'm trying not to spoil anything. So maybe you're the ultimate miner now, and you're going to sort of find things that let you mine and mine great ore and make incredible metallic inventions. I don't know, but there's not these ongoing narratives for you to get invested in. So the narratives are kind of what you invent. And that's why I said it's quite good at evoking that stuff, because it's much less rote than either of those other two games. But at the end, I felt like I'd had a story. And then you've got like Against the Frost, right? Which is quite a complex system, right? I mean, obviously ISS Vanguard is more complex. It's also a game of two games. It's spaceship management and planetary management. Sleeping Gods, many people were turned off it because the ship management of your ship, you're on a ship in that game, was too much. They didn't like that. They wanted to focus more on the narrative and the choose your own adventure bits. And then, Against the Frost is very much focused on the choose your own adventure stuff, but then it's got like a sort of a whole game aside attached to it. But then when we played it, I'm not even sure if we did it right. We got, you explained some amount of how the Call of Cthulhu RPG works, and we had some idea about how things work, and we're sort of tracking our sanity and our hit points and rolling the 2 dice and trying to get the values or whatever that we needed. But I don't know if we're ever quite playing it right, but it also didn't really matter. I think that if you really like that part of Against the Frost, where you're sort of developing your character and putting points into stats and really carefully managing sort of dice and trying to make choices based on sort of what you're good at and how difficult you think things are, there is a system that's similar to that in this, which is the tableau building and the challenge dice. There is not a lot of complexity there.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not a lot of control over it, what you add to it. You can't really develop it in specific ways. I mean, you can develop the stuff you've got. You can go, I really like this item. And then some items have an upgrade option. Some don't. And some are surprising as well. Like I found an item and I was like, I think if I interact with this, something bad's going to happen. And then I was like, maybe I'll do that. And then I didn't, Barry, because I was worried about what would happen. So I don't know. But I'm pretty sure something bad would have happened. But I guess what I'm saying is, like, you know, the game that exists in the tableau building and the dice management is not, if you're used to card games and deck construction and more sophisticated systems, like even Frost, I think Against the Frost had a more sophisticated system, you might find this underwhelming. Having said that, it was enough. What I appreciated about it was that it was quick to resolve, and it gave me enough feeling that I was playing a game without overburdening me with sort of management. So I could focus on exploring cards and finding more cards and developing the discovery, which is the core of the game. It is a discovery game. And you don't know what you're going to find unless you've already played that part of the world.
Yeah. So I guess I'm a little unclear. The weight of 2.4, are you saying that is too high or too low?
It is directly proportional to your familiarity with card games and the sort of abstraction of game mechanisms. It is not rules heavy. If you are any kind of hobby gamer, you will be completely fine. If you're not, then I think that managing the card tableau might be something you find a bit like the ship in Sleeping Gods. Sort of frustrating and annoying and unintuitive, and you don't have much control over it. And the problem is it's your entire risk mitigation. So you'll be trying to make choices about what to do on the location cards in the world, and you'll be like, well, I want to do this action here. And you'll be like, and your friend, me, will be like, if you do that, it's really high risk because you have no equipment that helps you with engage actions. And you'll be like, but that's what I want to do. And it's like, well, you know, you can do that then, but you might just get us killed. And then that's it, you know? And so I think that that's a bit of a shame because it is an obstacle to access, you know? And again, it comes back to this idea of, like, which I've talked a lot about in these sort of narrative driven games, which is the melding of game mechanisms and story, you know? And in Vantage, there's not, like I said, you know, you can stop in Vantage and the entire story can be interacting with the cards in your tableau. You know, and again, if you sort of struggle to get your head around the more abstract concept of where those actions exist, then you might not realize there's stuff you can do there. You might be like, what's the point? I'm supposed to be doing this mission, and now you want me to stop here and, you know, turn this crystal into an amulet? Why? And it's like, well, I don't know. Let's just see what happens. I don't know what's going to happen. Maybe something useful will happen. And it's like, but why though? Like, what's the point? And it's like, well, the point is, why not, right? Like, you're in this location, you've got nothing else to do, or, well, you've always got something to do. You can always move on from the location. But it's like I said, at that one point, my character kind of got trapped, and I had to try to fashion some way out of the situation I was in. And they were trapped because they were in a dangerous location. I don't think they had the health tokens to escape. So all I could do was sit and work on the stuff I had until I found some way to get out of there, right? Which I did for a long time. I upgraded almost everything and built an entire village, you know, and then did it work? Oh, I won't tell you. I think I've spoiled too much already. But conceptually, it's a bit abstract. In terms of your actual objectives, one of our objectives is find three things. One of our destinies was find three things. And it's like, where are they? Just wander around and hopefully you'll find them. Hopefully you'll find someone that can tell you where they are. And if you don't, well, then hopefully you get a different destiny that's more achievable. Mm-hmm. So it's like, what are the objectives of this? It's like, the objective is have fun flipping over cards and seeing what happens. That's it. Like, that's the whole thing. And if you don't enjoy that, then you're not going to find much to enjoy here. If you need that goal-oriented drive. But if you like sort of discovering what happens and being sort of pleasantly surprised, like, the thing is, Jamie Stegmaier always makes what he calls fun. We might call cozy, like, it's really surprising actually to hear him talk about game design when he designed Scythe, because that's not really a fun or cozy game in the way he defines those things now. But this is a very friendly game. Like, even when it punishes you, it gives you like a super mean card that's like barely relevant. Like, it almost never comes into effect, And so it's like, it's kind of like you did it bad. And to that effect also, if you want to go in and be the villain, you're going to struggle in this game you can be a villain, but the opportunity doesn't come up much. Most of the time you're just kind of wandering around and finding things and exploring things, and that's it.
Oh, well, I mean, yeah, it sounds like the kind of thing I might be interested in, but really depends on being in the right frame of mind.
Yeah. I think this game is a bit of a sort of a state of mind, right? And that's, I think, it's interesting that we talked about Pergola in this episode, because that also strikes me as the kind of game where I'm almost want to go into a frame of mind where I'm just designing a nice dashboard, and then I'm sort of yanked out of that frame of mind at the end when it's like, now count your bees and see how many different colored lanterns you have. And so I'm constantly conflicted during the play. Like, oh, I really want to start another flower over here, but you can't because you'll get 2 more points if you put it on top of the existing flower. And it's like, but so am I designing a nice tableau, a visual tableau, or am I just maximizing score by putting things where you tell me to put them? This game doesn't really do that, right? It's literally like, do what's the most fun. If you'll always fail forward. It's very kind. It's a little difficult to access. That's what I'm talking about in terms of the gamification, some of the concepts. Like, I think you have to have that sort of brain that can sort of take game ideas and sort of imagine what's happening in a more emotional sense, like this idea of overpower or help or engage, even existing on your cards. Like, your character card comes with a buy action on it, which is an engage, right? So you're looking at your character, and this is what I mean by, like, it's a 2.4, because the rules overhead for understanding that buy is an engage action, and you're going to go into the engage book and look it up and then roll some challenge dice, is not difficult. But sort of conceptually, you're like, wait a minute, who am I buying from? Like, where are they? What's going on in the world, And you'll probably flip open that page and it'll be like a traveling merchant, calls you over, or something like that, right? Or, you could just got to do a little bit of extra sort of filling in of the blanks, and then the book does some of it for you. But when you're just looking at a series of cards with lots of little icons and lots of text on them, I think it can feel a little bit like, where's the story? This feels like, it looks like it should be in a head-to-head dueling game or something, not, a game that's focused on story and art. A big part of it is like, when you're at the locations, look at the pictures to see what's going on. What can you see? If you travel north, then you'll probably arrive where whatever you could see on the horizon in the last card was, because all of the visuals seem to be looking north. Which always means that the south is a big surprise because you don't know what's behind you, apparently. Yeah. But so it's a really strange sort of take on things. I do really like it. I'm pleased. I'm going to be pleased to go back to it. I'm going to be pleased to play it again multiplayer. I'm going to be enjoying it solo, I think, for a while. Certainly until I feel like I've sort of had a few runs where I've explored some different things. I think there's still a lot to see in the world that I haven't seen. So that's exciting. I think the art's great. So I do wish it was a little bit cheaper. It's £79 now, but that's the special launch price, and it's going to go up to £90 ever it's that launch period ends. So I think, if you're really into this sort of thing, then I think you find that money well spent. I've already played 10 to 12 hours of it, and so I feel like I've got my money's worth. But I would highlight that if you have a chance to play it before you buy it, that's always a good idea, especially when it's a more expensive product. And I do think that this would comfortably play up to 3. I don't think you would find the downtime egregious at 3. I think more than that, it will depend on your group and, what kind of... if you're looking for a more casual game evening, because you'll have significantly less to do at that player count. And similarly, everyone's sharing the same mission and destiny, so you're all working towards the same goal. It's completely cooperative, but you might be running around doing entirely your own different things. And so the degree to, it's always fun to find out what's happening with other people. And of course, somebody's reading them the storybook, so there's something for someone else to do as well, which is fun. But I think, you're not getting much value beyond just, creating that kind of vibe. So if that's the vibe you want for your evening, by all means go at higher player counts. But at that point, you're not getting anything more out of the game that you wouldn't be getting at even at 2 players.
I would say most shops seem to be selling Vantage for £60 rather than buying direct, because I think that's something else Stonemaier does. Obviously, sets the RRP and sells at that price, but is very retailer friendly as well in terms of their margins. So you can get it for cheaper if you buy from a board game shop.
And if you have the chance to support your local brick and mortar store, that's always a good idea too.
All right, very nice. What you got planned for the next couple of weeks of gaming?
Well, I'd like to get in one more game of Scarface. This, I think, will decide whether or not we need to uncover some mysterious secret that has it so highly rated on BGG, or whether it leaves my collection. I'm not optimistic.
Do or die.
I'm not optimistic about it, but it is at least intriguing enough that I'd like to put more time into playing it at least once more.
It's good. I have the Talbetop expansion.
Ooh.
Hope to get that played this weekend.
Yeah, I like Talbetop.
Send some miners ER into the mines and mine me some silver.
And then at the end, you can count up all your points.
And then at the end, I'm going to count up all my points based on the position of where the silver is.
Yep, and I hope you get a chance to check out Vantage at some stage as well. If your friend's got a copy, I would love to hear your thoughts on it and how that play goes.
Hopefully soon.
In the meantime, did I talk about Terrascape, right? I've talked about Terrascape on the podcast, I'm sure.
In the past, yeah.
So I've got another play of that scheduled, so... I know they're coming back to GameFound really soon, or they're coming back to crowdfunding really soon, so it'll be exciting to see what they're offering. I don't have any of the expansions. I don't know if I need them, but I've only played it the once, so I'd really like to play that again. So I'm looking forward to my play of that.
Very cool.
That's it from us. So I think that, if you have any questions, if you want to share your thoughts or comments, please, do leave a comment on the podcast. You can comment on Spotify. You can comment on YouTube. I don't know where else you can comment, but you can also send us an email, askreadytodaypodcast@gmail.com. We'll read everything that you write. We'll respond if we want to. And then we will, take it on board. Don't post any spoilers for Vantage. But, let us know how you got on with it. Let us know if you think it is entirely vibes-based. Am I way wrong with that? Is there more gamification? I think it is a real...
Post your Pergola high scores.
Post your Pergola high scores, yeah. What did you beat Barry's 119 yet? If you are on BGA, by all means, please go and start trying to beat Barry's 119 so he's less smug about it. It only took him 60 games, so you've got
8 points clear. 8 points clear when he is competitor.
We'll see how it is on the next podcast. We'll do a Pergola BGA update. But you can always find more thrilling board game content by following the podcast on whatever platform you are using. And we appreciate you spending your time listening to the show. And, if there's something you want us to cover, you can always let us know. And you can always support the show on Patreon, because we wouldn't be here without the wonderful patrons supporting the show and letting us know what they want to see as well. So thanks very much to the patrons for supporting, and thanks to all of you for listening, and we'll see you all in time.
Bye!